Page 101. Wan Tianqi dashed up to the examiner and secured third place in the assessment. Huh? Here comes someone else. The old man turned his gaze back to the swirling mist. Not even 10 minutes had passed before a new contender burst through, moving faster than Wan Tianqi had moments ago. Not bad, the examiner murmured, sizing up the newcomer. It was Gong Yin, the very archer who had struck at Shi Feng with those surprise arrows. He halted in the clearing, taken aback by the sudden crowd blocking his path. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he spotted a figure springing in from the flank, cutting off his retreat. Recognition hit him like a jolt, and his face paled. He backed away warily toward the examiner, every nerve on edge. Shi Feng's sheer speed had already unnerved him, and his impenetrable defense was something else entirely. Gong Yin had already unleashed 2 soul skills in rapid succession, yet neither had even grazed Shi Feng. He had no idea what other tricks the young man might have tucked up his sleeve, so he wouldn't risk a head-on clash. Instead, he fell back, eyes darting for an opening. Shi Feng didn't hesitate. He awakened his spirit, and a violet soul ring shimmered into existence. With a fierce cry, Yu Yue, he lunged forward. Zhao Yuyue was right behind him, though her pace lagged slightly. The moment she heard Shi Feng's shout, her eyes widened with understanding. As she sprinted, she released her martial soul. Even in broad daylight, a soft lunar glow veiled her form, making her appear almost ghostly. Before Gong Yin could react or step back, Yu Yue collided squarely into Shi Feng's arms. In that instant, the two completed the martial soul fusion technique. A roiling, ink-black mist burst forth, expanding in every direction until it shrouded a 10-meter radius, including the stunned figure of Gong Yin. Martial soul fusion technique, Qing gasped. The other instructors were just as astonished. They'd trained countless prodigies over the years, and everyone knew how rare a true fusion of martial souls could be. In all the camps they'd overseen, only one pair had ever managed it before, Hu Liana and Xie Yue's Demon Beauty fusion. Yet here were Shi Feng and Zhao Yuyue producing the same extraordinary power, their combined aura filling the air with an eerie, inky haze. But this year, a new soul fusion technique surfaced, one remarkably similar in its ranged fusion style to Hu Liana's. What stunned everyone most, however, was the deep purple soul ring appearing on Shi Feng's arm. They'd studied martial soul fusion before, but never had they encountered a first soul ring that was over 1,000 years old. It simply didn't exist in any of their records. Instructors from every faction froze in disbelief, Wan Tianqi among them, while Qing's eyes went wide and she murmured in a strangled voice, "He can't die." In her alarm, she grabbed Longshan and shook him as though he could somehow fix it. "Don't let him die." Longshan barely registered her trembling grip. Despite their lofty cultivation levels, none of them could pierce the churning black mist that swallowed the battlefield, a living, howling demon of shadows. Inside that inky veil, Gong Yin's face drained of color. His heart thundered in his chest as realization dawned. It was the fabled martial soul fusion technique. Terror gripped him down to his bones. Shi Feng had already been burning with jealousy toward Zhao Yuyui's dazzling performance. Now, however, he faced an even greater shock. Another Shi Feng had stepped forward and activated the martial soul fusion technique, a power so extraordinary that the combination of two souls yielded far more than the sum of their parts. "You little devil! All the instructors are watching. How dare you attack in public?" Gong Yin's voice rang out, sharp and indignant. Almost at once, a suffocating black mist billowed around Shi Feng. Within its depths, countless resentments whispered and clawed at his mind, tearing his spirit to pieces. Disoriented, he lost all sense of direction as the darkness pressed in like a physical weight. Instinctively, he raised his hands to shield his eyes, but the mist was so thick he couldn't even see his own palms. Though the fog absorbed most sound, Gong Yin's terrified shout still carried beyond the veil, sending a ripple of alarm through everyone watching. Shi Feng's voice echoed from every direction. Instructor Long said there's no killing inside the city, but he never forbade it beyond the walls. I've already asked him, and he's given me permission to kill you. Gong Yin's face went pale. He gripped his great bow of martial soul tighter, but Shi Feng's disembodied voice froze him in place. He bolted forward as fast as he could, yet it felt as though he were wading through treacle, trapped in a suffocating black mist. A tide of resentment battered his mind, fueling a brutal urge to slaughter. His consciousness began to blur, and his blood roiled as if drawn toward some unseen force, compelling him onward. Crimson crawled beneath his skin, blood seeped from every pore. Red veins webbed across his eyes, and thick rivulets of blood oozed from the corners of his sockets. In mere minutes, long before Shi Feng struck, Gong Yin was perilously close to losing himself entirely. Shi Feng's lips curled into a cold smile as he watched Gong Yin's frantic agony. Whenever Gong Yin's soul ring flared, a storm of spectral arrows spat forth in all directions, but none of them ever came close to Shi Feng. Sidestepping each volley with effortless grace, Shi Feng taunted, "You're inside the effective range of my skill now. No matter how many arrows you summon, you'll never land a single hit." Gong Yin's roar twisted into a choke of desperation. His mind teetered on the brink of collapse as the terror overwhelmed him. "I know I was wrong. Please, just let me go. I'll do anything you ask, I swear." He dropped to his knees, fingers clawing at the dirt as he pressed both hands to his throbbing temples, the last threads of his will unraveling. Shi Feng strode forward, seized Gong Yin by the throat, and hoisted him upright. Weak gasps escaped through the strangled plea. "Give me pain, quickly." Without a word, Shi Feng flexed his elongated nails and sliced into Gong Yin's neck. Crimson jets erupted from the wound, yet the blood didn't stain the earth. It hovered, shimmering in midair, then surged toward Shi Feng like living tendrils, piercing his skin one by one. As the life essence flooded into him, Gong Yin's struggle fell silent, and Shi Feng's crimson aura blazed with newfound power. As the fresh blood coursed through him, Shi Feng felt a surge of unparalleled satisfaction. A wild, bloodthirsty energy burst from his core, and he couldn't help but roar his triumph to the heavens. Outside, every instructor wore a solemn expression. None had expected to witness Shi Feng and Zhao Yuye's martial soul fusion executed with such devastating precision. "So malevolent," Longshan murmured under his breath, eyes narrowed. "Such profound resentment. I've never seen anything like it." Chapter 78. 3 years later. Though the chamber's doors remained firmly shut, everyone outside sensed what was happening within. Gong Yin was on the brink of death. Whispers fluttered through the gathered crowd. "This martial soul fusion technique is even more merciless than Huliena's or Shi Yue's," Qing murmured, her voice trembling. She could scarcely believe how far Shi Feng's talent and power had soared in just 3 years. In the next moment, a thick black mist billowed outward, and then abruptly dissipated. Standing in its place were Shi Feng and Zhao Yue, looking neither exhausted nor wounded, but brimming with barely contained energy. A few paces away lay the corpse of a grand soul master, the once proud warrior reduced to a withered husk, face contorted in agony, eyeballs grotesquely protruding from their sockets. Zhao Yue's breath caught at the gruesome sight. She had known Shi Feng was strong, but never imagined his fusion technique could obliterate a grand soul master so decisively. The two of them exchanged a brief glance, then silently stepped to the side, leaving the fallen giant to lie still in the eerie hush that followed. Wan Tianqi stumbled backward, his face drained of color. Terrified by Shi Feng and Zhao Yue's unearthly abilities, he silently vowed that for the next 3 grueling years in the camp, he'd do everything in his power to avoid crossing their paths. Watching Wan Tianqi's retreat, Commander Longshan felt his own doubts vanish. He finally understood that Shi Feng wasn't some paper tiger propped up by the Pope's influence, but a genuine prodigy. No wonder the Pope had personally requested that Shi Feng be transferred here. Any teacher would treasure a talent like his. In fact, Longshan wouldn't mind doing so again. But extraordinary gifts demanded extraordinary trials. Beyond merely ensuring Shi Feng's survival, Longshan was determined to push him to his absolute limit, wringing every ounce of potential from him in this death camp. Moments later, another boy burst from the obstacle course, gasping for breath. The elder and the instructors exchanged disappointed glances. No matter how hard the boy had tried, his willpower clearly fell short of their unforgiving standards. The 5th Heavenly King stumbled out of the swirling scarlet mist, a faint map etched onto his trousers, proof that he'd nearly surrendered to the illusion's lure. Despite the haze's pull, he'd forced himself back to reality at the last moment. His performance was less than stellar, but he'd passed. He charged forward and roared, "Gong Yin! Today, your life belongs to me." When Wan Qianqi blurted out that the mummy before them was actually Gong Yin, the king's shock dwarfed even Tianqi's. He whirled to face Shi Feng and the others, eyes wide with horror. As dusk fell, yet another wave of trainees, boys and girls, poured into the mist, each determined to overcome the final trial. But not one managed to break free. With a single motion, Master Say banished the red fog. Dozens of teens lay writhing on the ground, trapped in illusions they couldn't escape. Instructors hurried forward, shaking and slapping each young victim until they woke. Shi Feng scanned the groggy faces and froze. Every girl's vacant expression was exactly like the one Zhao Yuyue had worn when she'd fallen under the same spell. In that moment, everything clicked into place. Zhao Yue felt her cheeks burn as Shi Feng turned to stare at her with an inscrutable expression. She wished she could slip into the crack in the mountain behind her and disappear. After all, 2 days of the 3-day trial had already passed, and most of the students remained trapped inside the illusionary forest. Only those, like Shi Feng, who'd found a way out, were being escorted back. By the end of the 3rd day, there was just one clear victor, an 8-year-old boy who shattered the illusion and claimed 5th place. Everyone else who emerged too late was lumped into 6th place, and those who never reached the final level within the 3-day limit were marked as failures with 0 points. With half a day to spare, the instructors mounted a full-scale search of the forest and rescued every remaining student. By the time they returned to the city, night had already fallen. No further assignments were given. The students were granted free time to rest. Zhao Youyou, now officially Shi Feng's subordinate, moved into his small quarters. Her sudden proximity to him did not go unnoticed. Whispers followed her everywhere she went. When word spread that Zhao Yuyue and Shi Feng had unleashed the martial soul fusion technique to slay Gong Yin, the entire academy shuddered. Those who had gazed upon the reanimated corpse knew full well how grotesque and unrelenting such a death could be, but none had imagined the body in question belonged to Gong Yin. Late that afternoon, Shi Feng sat cross-legged on the floor of his private chamber. His gaze was steady as he addressed Zhao Yuyu, who knelt before him in respectful silence. "Yuyue," he said, "what's our next training assignment?" Zhao Yuyue bowed once, then rose to her feet. "Master, I just confirmed the schedule. Tomorrow we're heading to the killing field." At the mention of the name, Shi Feng's lips curved into a faint smile. "The killing field," he repeated, "where our foes are nothing but vicious murderers." She nodded gravely. "Yes. Within the city walls, the killing field is reserved for the most dangerous criminals, souls twisted by years of slaughter. Though they match our realm's cultivation level, these murderers are battle-hardened, merciless, and notorious for driving even seasoned soul masters into retreat. Historically, nearly every student sent there has died at least once." Shi Feng's eyes gleamed with anticipation. "Each student goes once a month, right?" "You're correct," Zhao Yuyu replied. "It's a rite of passage. We must prove our strength, sharpen our instincts, and discard any hesitation before life or death stares us down." He nodded. "Good. We'll make every moment count." Zhao Youyue hesitated a heartbeat before adding, "Also, Master, starting tomorrow morning, several new training arenas across the city will open their doors. We can register for specialized combat drills, elemental trials, and spirit beast sparring." Shi Feng rose to his feet, cloak swirling around him. "Then let's be among the first to sign up. Every challenge we conquer only makes us stronger." With that, Zhao Youyue bowed once more and slipped out to prepare. Shi Feng remained by the window, eyes fixed on the moonlit courtyard below. Come dawn, the killing field would test their resolve, and he intended to emerge unbroken. "Our sparring matches will all be supervised by instructors," the head coordinator announced, "so you'll grow stronger far more quickly." Shi Feng nodded. No wonder the Spirit Hall's infamous death camp drew so many applicants every year. Nothing forges resolve like fighting under the looming threat of elimination. Here, they didn't just build power, they tempered minds. Graduates from this crucible would be a world apart from pampered greenhouse prodigies. He turned to Zhao Yuyue. "Yuyu, your fighting fundamentals need shoring up. Make sure you devote extra time to combat drills, understood?" Understood, master? Zhao Yue replied, her eyes bright as a songbird's. In the days they'd spent together, she'd discovered that Shi Feng was surprisingly approachable. His temper was calm, and her initial jitters around him had already begun to fade. Master, she ventured after a moment, may I ask something? Go ahead, she took a breath. Which family do you come from? I don't have one, Shi Feng said evenly. Zhao Yue's eyes widened. With talents like his, she'd simply assumed he must hail from some illustrious household. Zhao Yue lingered at the edge of the courtyard, her eyes fixed on her master. He must have been one of the orphans taken in by the Wuhun Palace, she thought to herself. Shi Feng, oblivious to her speculation, waved a dismissive hand. It's late. Return to your quarters and continue your training, he said. With a quiet bow, Zhao Yue slipped away. Shi Feng turned toward the moonlit balcony and settled into a cross-legged position. The night breeze stirred the air as he closed his eyes and began to circulate his spiritual energy. 3 years of isolation. 3 years to bring my cultivation up to the level of a soul master. And once I shatter the 20th level, the next heavenly tribulation will descend. The looming catastrophe was fraught with danger, but the system's rewards at its end were nothing short of generous. 3 years later, just beyond the gates of the Black City, a group of teenagers, boys and girls alike, gathered with faces alight in excitement. Today, they were finally graduating from the lethal death camps that had forged them. Each of them felt reborn. Those 3 years of hellish training had reshaped them, body, mind, and spirit, into warriors of remarkable strength and unwavering resolve. This was the largest cohort yet. More than 50 students had survived to receive their diplomas. If they remained alive and well in the years to come, they would rise as the Temple of Martial Souls elite. Shi Feng, Qing called softly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. Don't ever forget to visit your sister. He looked up, a small, rueful smile tugging at his lips. I promise, he said. Despite the 3 years of grueling training, he still felt dwarfed by Qing's height and presence. She reached out and ruffled his hair affectionately, and he could only blush in response. With one last wave, Qing turned and strode back into the Black City, leaving Shi Feng and the rest of the graduates to step forward into the uncertain but hopeful future that awaited them. Then I'd better get going, Qing said with a bright smile. Before Shi Feng could reply, she leaned in and playfully kissed his cheek. Immediately, dozens of boys nearby looked on in envious awe. Instructor Qing was the fantasy of every male student. Her flawless face and enviable figure inspired countless teens to spend their savings chasing the illusion of a rendezvous with her. But those encounters were just that, illusions. No matter how sweet, awakening always brought disappointment. Shi Feng watched her walk away, a strange flutter in his chest. Her presence was intoxicating. He'd be lying if he claimed he wasn't affected. Catching himself staring, he forced his gaze downward. I'm only 9 years old, he reminded himself with a wry smile. How can I be feeling like this? At the age of 9, he already towered at 1.6 meters, just half a head shorter than Zhao Yue standing next to him. Sometimes he wondered whether he was growing too quickly. His body seemed to betray him with sudden, inexplicable reactions far beyond his years. Shaking off the awkward thought, he turned to his friend and asked, Ready to head back? Zhao Yue glanced his way and nodded. Let's go. Together, they stepped away from the training ground, leaving Instructor Qing just a memory, and a lesson in how illusions, for all their beauty, can leave you longing for more. Shi Feng's gaze lingered on Qing with a fond, almost nostalgic look. Seeing this, Zhao Yue felt a twinge of jealousy and straightened her back, determined to outshine Qing's instructor. But she quickly realized the gap was far too great. She stole another glance at Shi Feng's face, now undeniably more handsome than it had been 3 years ago, and couldn't help the flicker of admiration in her eyes. By now, the courtyard thronged with well-wishers, proud parents collecting their prodigies, and a handful of teenage orphans from Wuhun Palace, boys and girls bound by shared hardship, chattering excitedly about their journey home to Wuhun City. Master, why don't you ride back in my carriage with me? Zhao Yue offered brightly. No need, Shi Feng replied casually. Someone's expected to come for me. He wasn't entirely sure his stern uncle would show up. If he didn't, Shi Feng would simply walk home. At that, Zhao Yue's eyes lit up. She rose onto her toes, waved both arms, and called out, "Third uncle, over here!" Shi Feng looked up just in time to see a dashing man in his 30s urging a carriage toward them at a brisk trot, confirming that indeed someone had come. "Whoa!" The young man screeched to a halt in front of Zhao Yue's car, leaping out and tousling her hair with a broad grin. "Yue, it's been years. You've grown so tall. You're almost as big as your third uncle now." Zhao Yue beamed up at him, her eyes shining with a warmth Shi Feng had never seen before. She turned and looked expectantly at Shi Feng. "Master Shi, this is my third uncle. Since you both live in Wuhan City, why don't we all ride back together in his car?" Shi Feng shook his head gently. "That's very kind, but I'll wait here." He didn't want to leave without first meeting her uncle. Otherwise, they'd only end up backtracking later. At that moment, Zhao Yue's uncle finally registered Shi Feng's presence. He regarded the younger man with a curious tilt of his head. Though Shi Feng was slightly shorter than his niece, his calm confidence and striking features invited a second glance. Yue, her uncle said, nodding toward Shi Feng. "And who is this young man?" Zhao Yue smiled warmly. "He's been my partner for the past 3 years at the concentration camp." Shi Feng smiled warmly. "Yue hasn't caused me any trouble. She's been looking out for me." The young man arched an eyebrow. "Tell me, little brother, whose family do you belong to?" Shi Feng shook his head. "I don't have one." "Then let me give you a lift," the young man offered, his cheerful smile fading into polite concern. "Thank you, but that won't be necessary," Shi Feng replied. "Someone will pick me up soon." "Very well." The young man turned to Zhao Yue. "Come on, Yue, let's head home." With a reluctant sigh, Zhao Yue climbed into the waiting carriage beside her uncle. Just before the door closed, she leaned out and called, "Shi Feng, see you at Wuhandian Academy." Shi Feng gave her a friendly wave. "Safe travels, Yue. See you soon." As the carriage rolled away, her uncle watched it go, then turned back to her with a teasing grin. "So, Yue, do you like that boy?" Zhao Yue's cheeks flared red. "Uncle, what are you talking about?" He chuckled softly. "I'd never pry into your heart, but he is a handsome lad. Pity he has no family of his own." Shi Feng traced his fingertips over the surface of the ancient relic. "These family heirlooms aren't so easy to handle," he remarked softly. Zhao Yue hurried to add, "Third uncle, Shi Feng's talent actually surpasses mine." Their third uncle leaned back in his chair, a pleased smile playing on his lips. "All the better," he said. "He'll be more responsive to instruction. You both have my full support." The carriage lurched to an abrupt stop. "Whoa! What's happened, third uncle?" Zhao Yue leaned forward, concern creasing her brow. Her uncle merely smiled and waved at a second carriage drawing near. "Look over there." As the other vehicle rolled beside them, he called out, "Commander Naji, greetings." Inside, a stern, middle-aged man offered no reply beyond a brief nod. Zhao Yue's eyes widened. "Who is that? He looks immense." "Hush," her uncle whispered. "That's the commander-in-chief of the Pope's palace guard. I can't believe we've run into him." "A commander-in-chief? Here?" Zhao Yue gasped. Impulsively, she drew back the rear curtain to get a better view. In that moment, Commander Naji slammed his own brakes. His carriage skidded to a halt directly in front of theirs. The door swung open, and the same formidable guard captain who'd escorted Shi Feng earlier appeared in the doorway. He fixed Shi Feng with a cool, appraising stare and spoke simply, "Get in the carriage." Shi Feng scowled as he clambered into the carriage. "Uncle, you're finally here. I thought I'd have to walk home." "Driver, let's go," the coachman called, cracking his whip. The horses bolted forward, and Shi Feng's journey back began. He didn't even notice Zhao Yue standing by the roadside. By the time he did, the carriage was already disappearing around the bend. A young man watching from the path patted her shoulder. "Yue, it seems your friend's background is more complicated than you realized. Be sure to keep him close." Zhao Yue nodded. "Understood, third uncle." The carriage rattled to a halt in front of a sprawling courtyard. Shi Feng jumped down and bowed. "Thank you for coming all this way to fetch me, uncle." The middle-aged man who descended beside him straightened his shoulders. "My surname is Ji. I command the Pope's palace guards. You may call me Commander Ji." Shi Feng flashed an impish grin. "Commander Ji feels too stiff. How about Lao Ji? We're all born once, but it's our second meeting that really matters. Commander G's lip twitched. He clearly wanted to swat Shi Feng, but he caught himself and let out a short chuckle. You're quick with words, boy. Then he went silent once more. Shi Feng rolled his eyes, settled back on the carriage bench, and closed them, knowing the ride home would be a long one. Shi Feng sat alone in the gloom of his cell, memories of the past 3 years in the concentration camp weighing on him. Endless life-or-death trials and unceasing cultivation had driven his base to soar all the way to level 29, just one step shy of breaking through to Soul Master. He owed every ounce of that progress to Master Longshan's iron-hard standards, which were far stricter on him than on any other student. Chapter 80. The younger brother is no longer young. In his first year behind those walls, Shi Feng had already leapt to level 20. The system had rewarded him with a soul ring upgrade voucher, and he used it to enhance his first ring to the maximum age his body could tolerate. Not long after, he begged Master Longshan to help him hunt a 5,000-year-old soul beast. Together they struck it down, and the newly claimed ring propelled him to level 21. Before the year was out, Shi Feng slipped beyond the city's defenses, found an uninhabited valley, and weathered the second cataclysm alone. Now, 3 years later, he gazed inward and realized how much he'd changed. The boy who had first entered the camp was long gone. The younger brother he once was had grown up in fire and blood. Shi Feng frowned as he inspected the Tribulation Crossing gift pack. Once again, it contained only a single drop of Thunder Tribulation liquid, half of which he'd already used to survive his last tribulation. Now, just a half drop remained. He opened his status panel to review his current stats. Host, Shi Feng, Douluo rank 29, zombie level 212 soul rings, first ring 5,000-year spirit, second ring 5,000-year spirit. Soul skills, zombie armor, corpse poison formation. Inventory, Thu, Nender Tribulation liquid, drop. Shi Feng tapped the icon for corpse poison formation and studied its details. Within a 10-meter radius, he could summon a swirling field of corpse toxin. Though this poison was weaker than the venom coursing through his own body, it still sapped an enemy's strength the longer they remained inside. Trapped foes would find their combat abilities rapidly degrade, leaving them easy prey for Shi Feng's onslaught. Best of all, he could mold the formation instantly, anywhere within his mental projection, creating lethal death traps at will. With this power in hand, Shi Feng felt ready to face whatever trials lay ahead. The smaller the poison formation's perimeter, the more lethal and intensely concentrated its toxins become. Over the past 3 years, Shi Feng has honed his skills in the Camp of Refinement and never once returned to Holy Soul Village. Even if he had the chance now, he wouldn't dare. Tang Hao could be in Nodding City at this very moment, shadowing Tang San's entourage. If Shi Feng risked a homecoming and ran into Tang Hao, he'd be killed on the spot. Though he now stands in open opposition to Tang San and his son, Shi Feng refuses to crush them by calling on the might of the Wuhun Palace. He wants to shatter them through his own power, to drive them into such utter despair that the very thought of revenge becomes impossible. Only then can he be certain they'll never rise against him again. Shi Feng's confidence wasn't misplaced. With the aid of his system and his natural talent, he had already broken through to cultivation level 29 by the age of 9, while Tang San, nearly 3 decades old, had only reached level 12. That 3-year edge, once established, felt insurmountable. Over the past few years, he had fired off dozens of letters to Old Jack, careful not to mention exact numbers, but painting a vivid picture of his progress. When Old Jack discovered Shi Feng was training in Wuhun City, he'd laughed until his sides ached. The carriage charged across the plain overnight, covering the distance so swiftly that by the next afternoon, they were already passing beneath Wuhun City's towering walls. It wasn't as vast as Tiando City, but it bustled all the same. Districts near the Pope's palace were eerily quiet and well-guarded, yet beyond those solemn gates lay crowded markets, guild halls, and workshops brimming with life. Here in Wuhun City stood the Wuhundian Academy, the ancestral seat of the Zhao family, and dozens of other prominent clans devoted to the palace. Even several martial sects affiliated with the Wuhun Palace had planted branches among the city's winding streets. At the base of Pope's Hill, Commander Ji reined in his horse and offered Shi Feng a respectful nod. The guards lining the marble steps exchanged curious glances at the boy. His youth and solitary appearance set him apart, but when Commander Ji strode forward, none dared question his arrival. Together they climbed toward the summit, where the Pope's grand chapel served as both a sanctuary of faith and a proving ground for Wu Hun's most promising disciples. Shi Feng committed Commander Ji's face to memory as they walked. He couldn't afford another courtesy escort up the mountain just because someone recognized him. At the palace of the Pope, Commander Ji halted at the great iron gates, dropped a curt nod, and turned away without a word. Shi Feng stifled a smirk. Commander Ji might be the Pope's prized disciple, but he might as well have been carved from stone. No warmth, no smiles. What irked Shi Feng more was the absence of Master Bibi Dong. Surely she'd heard of his return by now? He shrugged and made for his quarters. First things first, a long, steaming bath to wash off the journey. Then he'd seek out Bibi Dong and find out why she'd left him unwelcomed. The palace corridors were hushed as ever. In no time, he reached his old room and froze. 3 years had passed, yet everything was unchanged. The same rustic wood panels, the same faint musk in the air, the lingering scent of Juliana incense. A rush of nostalgia pulled at him, memories of his earliest days here warming his chest. But this time, Shi Feng decided he wouldn't sleep under these familiar rafters. A fresh start demanded a new room. With that resolve, he crossed the threshold and prepared for the next chapter of his return. Shi Feng felt a familiar unease stirring in his chest. Ever since his cultivation had progressed, he'd found his resistance to temptation, once honed by Juliana, steadily waning. The thought of living under the same roof with her again, in his current state, filled him with dread. What kind of trouble might he fall into? The room was empty, save for the huge pink canopy bed. Across its satin sheets lay an assortment of lingerie, far more than when he'd left. Clearly, these were the things Juliana had drifted back to over the years. Before, he might have paid them no mind. Now, however, those small, delicate garments held his gaze as though woven with magic. No. Shi Feng shook his head, dispelling the illicit thoughts that threatened to take hold. He dashed into the adjoining bathroom, determined to jolt himself awake. He turned the tap to its coldest setting and thrust himself under the icy downpour. The shock of the water stung, but it cleared his head. As the spray pounded against his shoulders, he found himself humming the old fox dance melody he'd learned in his youth. May I dance once more for you, white fox freed after mill. Enya, watch my silken coat flutter in echoes of our farewell, forever turning to nothingness. The chorus faded on his lips as the shower continued its steady roar, washing away both sweat and temptation. Outside, in the doorway, Juliana, fresh from her visit to Bibi Dong's place, stood rooted to the spot. The cold water's chime of dripping tiles and Shi Feng's soft melodic humming reached her ears, and for a long moment she simply watched him through the frosted glass, with uncertainty flickering in her eyes. Shi Feng was humming a melancholic tune in the bath, completely absorbed in a song he'd cherished in his past life. His soft, sorrowful notes drifted through the steam and stirred something deep in Juliana. By the time the final chord faded, tears were already streaming down her cheeks. Only then did Shi Feng snap back to reality. He'd been so lost in the music, he hadn't noticed anyone approaching. As he peered out into the doorway, the bathroom door swung open, and Juliana's voice rang out with surprise and delight. "Xiaochen, you're back," she began. Then her words caught in her throat. Standing before her was no longer the wide-eyed junior she remembered, but a strikingly handsome young man. For a suspended moment, the two of them simply stared, as if time itself had held its breath. Then, with a sharp clatter, the bar of soap slipped from Shi Feng's grasp and tumbled to the floor. The awkward silence shattered, and in his fluster, Shi Feng hastily closed the door behind him. All that remained was the echo of his own racing heartbeat. Juliana fell silent, her cheeks burning as red as a ripe apple, and bolted from the room. She'd been so certain Shi Feng was still a little 6-year-old that she hadn't thought twice about barging in to surprise him. Instead, she walked in on a fully grown teenage boy. Holding the bar of soap, Shi Feng managed a wry smile, rinsed it off as quickly as he could, then stepped out. He hadn't expected Juliana to return so abruptly. Her sudden entrance had startled him. She looked much as he remembered, but her figure was even more striking than before. In that moment, Shi Feng couldn't help but compare her to the famously seductive and mature Qing Qing. Chapter 81. Competing with Juliana. The guest room lay empty. Juliana had clearly rushed out the moment Shi Feng arrived. He sat on the sofa, wringing damp strands of hair from his fingers, feeling more helpless than he'd anticipated. Never in his life had he expected her to react so strongly, stare at him silently, then bolt from the room as if chased. 10 minutes later, soft footsteps announced her return. Juliana paused in the doorway, her cheeks flushing back to their usual pale hue. She offered him a steady look, as though nothing had transpired, and said coolly, "You're back." Shi Feng managed a polite nod, though a faint pink crept up his own cheeks. He couldn't help but notice the slight tremor in her voice. Her calm facade was more fragile than she let on. Rising to his full height, he gave a small, respectful bow. "Senior sister, it's been a long time," he said. He stood tall and straight, every line of his posture confident and controlled. Even in that simple greeting, his striking features, strong jaw, clear eyes, and the ease of a seasoned warrior, seemed to draw Juliana's gaze despite her efforts to remain composed. Juliana couldn't help but click her tongue in delight. "I can't believe it's been 3 years already. You've grown so much. You're even more handsome than that little brat you used to be." Shi Feng grinned at her. "Senior sister, you're just as beautiful and charming as ever." The awkwardness between them at last melted away, replaced by the easy camaraderie they'd once shared. Juliana laughed softly. "After all this time, you're nearly as tall as I am." She reached out, pinched his cheek, then stepped back to gauge his height. Sure enough, Shi Feng was only half a head shorter than her now. Caught off guard by the subtle scent of her perfume, Shi Feng lost his balance, stumbled backward, and flopped onto the sofa with a surprised yelp. Juliana chuckled, tilting her head as she eyed Shi Feng. "Little junior brother, I never imagined that after all these years you'd still be so reserved. It makes your senior sister want to try out her charms on you all over again." "Please, don't." Shi Feng held up a hand, genuine alarm in his voice. He backed away abruptly, fear of another embarrassing encounter spurring him toward the door. "I've been home long enough already. I'd better go see teacher." Juliana only laughed softly. "You're growing more timid by the day. Back then, you let me trample all over you without a word, but now you won't even come near me. You must feel a little guilty, don't you?" Her eyes sparkled as she fell into step beside him. "He's tied up with official business in his study," she added after a moment's pause. A short walk later, they arrived at Bibi Dong's door. Shi Feng knocked, and they entered together. Bibi Dong looked up from her desk. As soon as she saw Shi Feng, her expression brightened and she rose to greet him. "You've returned," she said with a warm smile. "Welcome home." "Master, I'm back." Shi Feng stepped into the chamber and bowed respectfully, his eyes fixed on the elegant figure before him, Pope Bibi Dong. A surge of emotion welled up inside him as he recalled the grueling 3 years he'd spent under her command. The notorious training camp she'd sent him to had been a crucible of hardship, and the harsh drills had honed his endurance and steeled his resolve. Despite the years that had passed, Bibi Dong looked no older than 30. Today she wore simple, unadorned clothes instead of her usual papal robes, yet her calm confidence and quiet nobility shone through, drawing every eye in the room. "Welcome back," she said, reaching out to ruffle his hair. Her satisfied smile warmed Shi Feng more than any words. She had monitored his progress from the start, and his achievements astonished her, far surpassing even those of Juliana at the same age. "Please, take a seat," she added, motioning toward a low bench. "I have a few matters to attend to first." With that, she returned to her desk and resumed her official duties, leaving Shi Feng to settle in and reflect on how far he'd come. Shi Feng and Juliana settled onto the wooden benches just beyond the training arena, waiting in silence. After a moment, Master Bibi Dong rose, draped herself in her ceremonial pope's robes, and once more cut an imposing figure. "Come along, Shi Feng," she called. "Show me how much you've grown these past few years. Your senior sister is eager to spar with you." Shi Feng forced a wry smile and followed Juliana to the center of the field. Juliana nudged him playfully and murmured, "What's the matter? Feeling nervous?" Shi Feng cleared his throat. "Senior sister, please go easy on me." Juliana patted his shoulder. "Don't worry, I'll hold back, I promise." He shot her a grateful if uncertain look. He still wasn't sure just how powerful Juliana had become, and as a charm-type control soul master, her abilities could be formidable. Moments later, the trio reached a spacious clearing. At its center stood a raised ring, its edges marked by faintly glowing runes. Bibi Dong's voice rang out, "Step into the ring." Shi Feng and Juliana climbed in, facing each other from opposite corners, roughly 10 meters apart. Bibi Dong stood at the edge of the platform, her eyes bright with anticipation. "Shi Feng," she said, voice steady, "give it everything you've got. Let me see the strength you've honed over the years." "Master Shi Feng," Juliana said respectfully. "All right," Shi Feng replied, "let's awaken your martial spirit." At his words, Juliana's martial spirit materialized and fused with her body. Soft fox ears grew atop her head, and a swaying tail emerged behind her, instantaneously heightening her natural charm. She stood a little straighter and announced, "I am Juliana, martial spirit fox, grade 39, control type war soul, venerable tier. I await your instruction." Beside her, Bibi Dong mirrored her expectant expression, both young women looking to Shi Feng for guidance. Shi Feng's martial soul shifted. His eyes went jet black, fangs lengthened, and his fingers curled into razor-sharp claws. His handsome features twisted into a hideous mask, and a dark, malevolent aura rippled outward from him. Senior sister Juliana's eyes gleamed. That pressure, combined with Shi Feng's 2 purple soul rings, testified to his extraordinary potential. According to Longshan's report, his second ring boasted the potency of a 5,000-year spirit. "Shi Feng," she called out, "martial zombie soul, level 29 assault department great soul master. Show us your strength." Juliana had known his talent was off the charts, but she hadn't expected him to reach level 29 in just 3 years, only 1 level below her own soul master rank. Swallowing her surprise, she forced a calm smile. "Senior sister will not hold back. Please begin." No sooner had the words left her lips than her first soul ring flared to life, readying her spirit weapon. Shi Feng's sheer unpredictability pressed down on her. If she could not subdue him within 10 exchanges, her teacher would surely be disappointed. Shi Feng's lips twitched as he met her gaze, ready for the duel to commence. Chapter 82, Spirit Bone. Shi Feng knew all too well the first 2 charm techniques of Juliana. She had tormented him night and day, and even now, the memory still haunted him. As her massive tail began to glow a deep crimson, he could feel his mental defenses crumbling. A sudden haze clouded his mind, and every fiber of his being was drawn to her. But Shi Feng was no novice. He let her enchantment wash over him just long enough to trigger his own countermeasure. With a flash of purple light, his second spirit ring flared to life, and a sinister poison formation erupted beneath Juliana's feet, spreading in a 10-meter radius. Wisps of violet mist curled upward, filling the air with a choking haze. Juliana's eyes went wide. She made to leap clear of the trap, but the toxic mist had already seeped into her pores, invading her lungs and bloodstream. The venom worked with terrifying speed, eating away at her soul power and strength. She staggered forward, panic surging as her spirit rings pulsed uncontrollably. First her second ring, then her third, each ignition a grim testament to how desperately her energy was being drained. Juliana's third soul ring flared a deep violet, a 1,000-year-old relic with roughly 2,000 years of lingering power. Although its raw strength trailed behind Shi Feng's first 2 rings, its control magic was more than formidable. Spotting that his snare had worked, Shi Feng grinned and lunged forward, determined to teach this ever-taunting senior sister a lesson. But before he could cover more than a couple of strides, Juliana unleashed the poison formation woven into her soul ring. In an instant, tendrils of illusion wrapped around Shi Feng's consciousness, yanking him into a dreamlike trance. In that phantasmal world, Juliana's robes hung in tatters, leaving her half-veiled in enticing disarray. She drifted toward him with languid, provocative steps, her breath a silken whisper, promising forbidden ecstasy. The temptation was a potent toxin to his mind. Shi Feng felt his will dissolve as desire tightened its grip, rendering him a helpless passenger in the illusion. Only when Hu Liena tore herself free from the poison formation did the spell finally collapse. Shi Feng staggered back, blinking as reality snapped into focus. Beside him, Hu Liena lay crumpled and pale, her strength nearly spent. Both cultivators were shaken, proof that even the smallest soul ring, wielded with cunning, could turn the tide of battle. Although the toxin woven into Shi Feng's formation wasn't especially lethal, its unique properties made it devilishly insidious, constantly eroding both his opponent's spirit power and physical vitality. Hu Liena ground her teeth as waves of the poison's chill crept through her veins. She drew a dagger, paused, then discarded it for a heavy hammer. If she lingered at range, the toxin would finish her Fef before Shi Feng ever stirred, and he would awaken triumphant. Her only chance was to render him unconscious with one crushing blow. Hu Liena's strength was draining fast. Her face had already taken on a sallow, purplish tinge. Steeling herself, she vaulted directly in front of Shi Feng and lofted the hammer above her head. Time seemed to slow as the weapon arced downward, an impact meant to shatter skull and victory alike. "Senior sister, you're so cruel," Shi Feng murmured with a crooked grin, his voice suddenly calm. "Aren't you worried about knocking out my last brain cell?" In that instant, his blurred vision snapped into focus. With uncanny reflexes, he seized her hammer-wielding wrist, halting the blow mere inches from his temple. Muscles coiled beneath his robes, and in his ice-blue eyes burned the light of a fighter who had just reclaimed control of his own fate. The clearing fell deathly silent as poison and hammer alike hung suspended by a single decisive moment. It was Shi Feng's move now. Hu Liena's eyes widened in shock. You didn't fall into my illusion?" Shi Feng inclined his head with a faint smile. "Senior sister, you're so graceful and enchanting that I'd gladly linger in your dream forever, but I recognize it's only an illusion. No mere copy could outshine the real you." Anger flared in Hu Liena's gaze. She'd never expected Shi Feng to see through her ruse so readily, nor to feign confusion just to draw her out. She lashed out with her right hand, desperately trying to wrench free from his iron-strong grip, but it was useless. A soft, mocking voice echoed in her mind. "Stop struggling, Nana. You've already lost." It was Bibi Dong, the last vestige of her control system, admitting defeat under Shi Feng's relentless assault. With a single, measured breath, Shi Feng relaxed his hold and stepped back. Hu Liena's expression faltered. She was a control system soul master, and she'd just been bested by an attack system soul master. There was no turning back now. "Senior sister, let me detoxify you," Shi Feng said, voice low and steady. He placed a reassuring hand over hers. Almost immediately, Hu Liena's strength abandoned her, and she slumped forward. Instinctively, Shi Feng caught her, her delicate form folding into his arms. He held her gently, then pressed the palm of his hand against hers. A warm, golden light of soul force radiated from his fingertips as he drew the poisons from her veins, careful, precise, and entirely without hesitation. Hu Liena had only been trapped in the poison formation for a few moments, so only a small amount of toxin had entered her body. Yet even that was enough to sap her strength and leave her vulnerable. If she didn't detoxify soon, her life would be in danger. Once the last traces of poison were expelled, her color returned, her soul power stabilized, and her body began to mend. Shi Feng hovered at her side, worry etched on his face. He wasn't a healing soul master, otherwise he could have helped her recover more quickly. "Sister Lena, are you all right? I'm so sorry." Hu Liena waved him off weakly. "Don't blame yourself. It's me who failed. Despite being 10 soul levels higher, I couldn't even hold you in my illusion." Shi Feng shook his head. "Actually, I did collapse under your illusion, but I woke up the moment you appeared before me. Your technique is incredibly strong." Her eyes brightened at his praise. "Really? You're right, Shi Feng. Among all the control-type soul arts, my illusions are considered top tier. It's only your extraordinary willpower that let you break free so quickly." With that, a relieved smile tugged at her lips, and the tense atmosphere between them eased. "Remember this lesson. An enemy can always turn your own tactics against you," Instructor Bibi Dong warned as she stepped forward. Hu Liena lowered her head, guilt written on her face. "Teacher, I've let you down." Bibi Dong offered a reassuring smile. "You did very well. Now, take this." She produced a small, unassuming pill from her sash. Though its preparation was straightforward, It was made from rare herbs and worked wonders on depleted qi and blood. Hulina swallowed the pill. Almost immediately, a rosy glow returned to her cheeks. She gently stepped out of Shi Feng's embrace and stood tall once more. Bibi Dong stood before her two newest disciples, a satisfied smile softening her usually sharp features. Their talent in cultivation matched her own at the same age, and in many ways, Shi Feng had already surpassed her. Though he wielded one fewer martial soul than she once did, every other facet of his ability was more refined. Perhaps, she thought, in a few years she would name Shi Feng her sacred son. And if Huliana continued to excel, she might well become the next saintess. Imagine, a family of 3 Douluos, all bound by blood and loyalty. Well then, Bibi Dong said, turning to Shi Feng, you've grown enough to merit your own quarters. Nana, please prepare a room for him. Of course, teacher, Huliana replied, inclining her head. Then, her eyes bright with excitement, she added, it's so rare for the 3 of us, master and apprentices, to be together again. Let's share a meal. Bibi Dong laughed, nodding in agreement. That evening, as Shi Feng took his place at the table beside his teacher and fellow disciple, a warmth spread through him. After years spent wandering, always on the move, he felt something he hadn't in a long time: home. Shi Feng, I've seen how hard you've trained over the years, Bibi Dong said, her voice warm as she placed a small, bone-like talisman on the table. Once you break through to Soul Master, I want you to have this soul bone as a reward. Shi Feng froze, set down his chopsticks, and stared at the gift in disbelief. Teacher, this is far too precious. I can't accept it. Bibi Dong shook her head gently. Don't refuse. You've earned it. I gave a piece to senior sister as well. All that's left is for you to focus on your cultivation. Leave the rest to me. Moved by her generosity, Shi Feng bowed his head and managed a grateful smile. Thank you, teacher. A soul bone was an incredibly rare treasure, granted only by the Wuhun Temple's highest authorities. When absorbed, it would grant him an additional soul bone skill and boost his strength significantly. He could hardly believe Bibi Dong had entrusted him with such a gift so soon. Dinner concluded in a comfortable silence, and soon Shi Feng and Huliana returned to their shared residence. Once inside, Huliana led him to an empty room next door. Shi Feng, she said, opening the door, you can move in here from now on. It'll make it easier for us to train and exchange insights. Shi Feng's eyes widened in surprise. We'll communicate and cultivate together? He asked, heart-pounding. Huliana offered him a teasing smile. Of course. You'll have more time to learn from me, and I from you. Isn't that what senior siblings do? Shi Feng hesitated only a moment before nodding. Living side by side with Huliana would deepen their bond and accelerate their progress. Thank you, senior sister, he said earnestly as he stepped into his new room, determination shining in his eyes. Chapter 83. The Mysterious Old Man. Shi Feng hardly had time to think before his door slammed shut behind him. He pressed his back against it, heart hammering, only to feel relief drain away the moment Huliana slipped in through the adjoining balcony. Their rooms shared a narrow terrace, and she'd simply hopped across. You've embarrassed me in front of the teacher, she exclaimed, folding her arms over her chest. If I don't get my revenge, I can't very well be the legendary Huliana, can I? Shi Feng's pulse spiked. Great. Here it came again, the endless pranks and experiments that she delighted in. He spun away, but Huliana was already upon him. With a deft push, she sent him sprawling onto the sofa, then leaned forward, bracing her hands on its back. What's the matter? She teased, her voice lilting with challenge. You were so fearless in the arena, your illusions barely fazed you, and now you're quaking in your boots? His cheeks flushed. He twisted his head to the side, determined to resist her playful taunt. It had been years since they'd last met, yet her charm was as potent as ever. A simple tilt of her head, a mischievous sparkle in her eye, she could command any room with just a glance. You don't, he began, but her soft laughter cut him off. Shi Feng braced himself. His guinea pig days with Huliana were far from over. Huliana's pale fingers shot out and caught Shi Feng under the chin, twisting his face away. You're not a man, are you? She demanded, her tone equal parts accusation and disbelief. Shi Feng yelped in pain as her nails pierced a little too deeply. Without waiting for a reply, Huliana scrambled backward across the balcony rail and bolted into her room. She dove onto her bed, burying her face in the pillows, her cheeks burning. His reaction, she actually saw it, and it sent her heart racing. After a moment's tumult of emotions, she sat up and pressed her hands to her face. "No," she whispered fiercely. "I've charmed countless men, every one of them totally captivated. I've dealt with him many times before. I have no reason to be scared. Could it be because he's my younger brother?" She shook her head as if to dispel the thought. Then her lips curved into a sly smile. "Well, at least this proves my charm works on him. You insolent brat, if you ever defy me again, I'll make you regret it." Heh. Meanwhile, Shi Feng spent what felt like ages corralling his anger. When at last he managed a wry smile, he realized how reckless Juliana had been. If she kept pushing her luck, she was the one in danger. That evening, he left her to her devices and went to practice on the rooftop. True to form, she never disturbed him again. Early the next morning, Shi Feng stepped out of his room, bound for the place where he had first met Renxue. 3 years had passed since Shi Feng last laid eyes on Renxue, and not a day had gone by without him thinking of her. Now, standing before the vast, deserted martial arena where she once trained, he felt a familiar warmth in his chest. No servants patrolled these grounds, and no students interrupted the silence. This was truly her private sanctuary. Memories of their time together swept over him. Back then, she had teased him like an older sister, calling him her little brother. But to Shi Feng, she was so much more. A small smile tugged at his lips. How would she react when she saw the man he'd become? Would she still look at him as fondly as he remembered? With a chuckle, he stepped into the center of the arena. It felt good to be back. Shi Feng drew a deep breath, feeling the familiar hum of energy gather in his core. He shifted into his lightning fist stance, each fist crackling with raw power, and unleashed a series of blows into the air. Compared to 3 years ago, his strength had grown by leaps and bounds. Every punch sent arcs of blue electricity dancing along his arms, flickering so vividly that they threatened to sear the stone floor. The power behind each strike was enough to paralyze an ordinary opponent. He paused, letting the electric charge dissipate. Dust drifted around him in the stillness. Shi Feng closed his eyes, recalling Renxue's graceful movements and the way she had guided him through his earliest lessons. He vowed silently to become strong enough to stand by her side, no longer her little brother, but her equal. With renewed determination, he resumed his training, each thunderous punch echoing across the empty arena. Soon, he promised himself, he would find Renxue and show her exactly how far he had come. Shi Feng paused in mid-stance as a crackling arc of electricity snaked across his gloved fist. He realized the current was flowing from the corpse pill nestled within his body, the same pill that had absorbed the thunderous energy of his tribulation and now harmlessly channeled it through his lightning fist. Ordinarily, zombies recoil in terror at the slightest hint of heavenly thunder, yet his pill contained the storm without harming him. Shi Feng had no rational explanation for this phenomenon, only that it must be a gift of the mysterious system, or perhaps a side effect of the so-called super-evolution. He shifted his weight, flowing smoothly into the next strike, of his boxing form. As he moved, memories stirred. 3 years ago, he and Renxue had raced across these very training grounds, each pushing the other to new heights. The clatter of their punches, the sting of their sweat, everything returned to him now, sharp and vivid, as he prepared to test his lightning fist once more. Shi Feng's speed increased with each passing moment, as though Renxue were still hot on his heels. What he didn't realize was that a white-haired elder had settled himself on a wall some 10 meters above the arena, his gaze fixed unblinkingly on Shi Feng. The old man watched Shi Feng unleash wave after wave of precise, powerful punches, each movement unlike anything he'd ever seen. His eyes widened. "Impossible, a self-created soul skill," he whispered, his voice barely audible. In the world of soul masters, most abilities relied on soul rings or soul bones to channel power. Self-created soul skills, by contrast, sprang entirely from the practitioner's own understanding and raw soul energy, and they were said to be nearly impossible to forge. Yet before him, Shi Feng was doing just that, unleashing force so pure and potent it defied belief. The elder's heart pounded as he continued to study the young man. His own cultivation was among the highest in existence. Few could rival him. And yet Shi Feng's martial arts, drawn from this mysterious, self-devised soul skill, remained utterly unfathomable. Never in all his years had he witnessed such uncharted power. Shi Feng's final strike fell into silence, and for a moment the training ground was still. High above, an elderly man sat cross-legged on the courtyard wall, quietly applauding. Shi Feng froze, his heart skipping a beat. The old man's slow, deliberate clapping echoed in the open air. Shi Feng's eyes narrowed to pinpoints as he sized up this unexpected spectator. Who was he? And more importantly, how long had he been watching? From his vantage point, the ancient master had recognized the underlying theory of the Haoqin school's chaotic cloak and hammer technique. But the boy's seamless fusion of hand strikes and evasive footwork left him puzzled. He'd once sparred with a legendary warrior from the Clear Sky School and still recalled the sting of defeat. Not even at the lofty level 99 realm had he managed to forge a soul technique as refined as this. Yet here stood a teenager executing it perfectly, right in the very place where his granddaughter trained. Curiosity burned in the old man's eyes. Who was this prodigy? And why had he appeared on sacred ground without so much as an introduction? Rumors had swirled among the clans of colored elders with peculiar tastes. Could this be one of them? Shi Feng's muscles tensed. Though still catching his breath, he bowed slightly in respect. "Sir, I didn't realize I had an audience." The old man's applause ceased. He leaned forward, studying Shi Feng's form, the confidence in his stance. A faint smile curved his lips. "No matter," he said softly. "Your technique speaks louder than words. Tell me, boy, who taught you to fight like this?" Just as Shi Feng's pulse quickened, the elderly man rose to his feet, and without a visible step or leap, began to float upward. He hovered in midair as though gravity itself had no hold on him, then descended slowly towards Shi Feng. Shi Feng's eyes widened. He stumbled back, heart pounding. To fly unaided in that way, what level of cultivation did it require? If the old man wasn't using a rare flying spirit bone, his power would be nothing short of astonishing. This must be an offering from the Elder's Hall, Shi Feng told himself, forcing his breathing to steady. Panic still fluttered at the edges of his mind, but he reminded himself of who he was. He squared his shoulders as the old man touched down lightly on the ground. The newcomer was an imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with long silver-white hair cascading down his back. His face, though lined by age, bore remarkably few wrinkles. As he landed, a calm, kindly smile spread across his features, and he began to walk toward Shi Feng with unhurried grace. "Young man," he called out in a gentle voice, "who are you, and what brings you here?" Shi Feng bowed respectfully, the doubt in his heart dissolving before the old man's serene presence. Without hesitation, he produced his credentials. "I am a disciple of the King Pope," he explained. "I came to this sacred land to meet a friend. It's been far too long since we last saw each other. I was just missing her, so I thought I'd come by and see how she's doing." Breaking into someone's home without permission was hardly polite, so Shi Feng decided to explain himself, and more importantly, to mention his connection with Qian Renshui. The instant the old man learned that Shi Feng was a disciple of the Pope, his face darkened. Yet something in Shi Feng's next words must have struck a chord, for the man's expression softened and he leaned forward. "You know Renshui?" he asked quietly. Shi Feng nodded. "Yes, we're still good friends." At the mention of both Bibi Dong and Qian Renshui, the old man visibly relaxed. His stern features eased into an affectionate smile. "So you're still Renshui's friend. I'm her grandfather. If you don't mind, you can call me Grandpa." Shi Feng hesitated for a heartbeat, then bowed slightly. "Grandpa? Grandfather?" Shi Feng thought in surprise. And not just any grandfather. This venerable elder was Douluo, the famed level 99 limit Douluo enshrined in the Wuhun Temple. He had once wondered what Douluo looked like in person, but never imagined meeting him under such unexpected circumstances. Douluo studied Shi Feng with a pleased nod. "Let's sit over there and talk." "All right." Shi Feng followed him into the gazebo and settled onto a wooden bench. Douluo leaned forward, curiosity in his eyes. "I heard the Pope accepted a disciple 3 years ago and sent him off to that training camp. You only just returned, didn't you?" Shi Feng tilted his head respectfully. "Yes, grandfather." He kept his tone polite. After all, winning Daolu's favor was the first step toward securing his granddaughter's future. The elder chuckled. You were only 6 when you first arrived at Wuhandian. How did you meet Shuer? Shi Feng smiled, recalling the memory. I got lost the day I arrived and ran right into her. Daolu laughed softly. I wouldn't have pegged you for a troublemaker, so Shuer didn't hold back. It was brutal, Shi Feng admitted, rubbing his chin as if still feeling the sting. My face swelled up so badly I could barely look in a mirror, but once she limited her cultivation to the Great Soul Master level, I managed to fend her off. He puffed out his chest, proud of the small victory. In that moment, he sounded every bit the mischievous boy he had been. Daolu raised an eyebrow. You, on equal footing, actually injured Shuer. What martial spirit do you have? Daolu couldn't help but ask. He'd long suspected that Shi Feng's cleverness was almost supernatural, but he'd never been convinced that his martial soul talent matched his wits. After all, their angelic martial soul was universally acknowledged as the strongest. And yet, to everyone's astonishment, Qian Renshui had fallen to this boy even while holding the advantage of a higher realm. Hearing Daolu's question, Shi Feng finally relaxed. He took a few deliberate steps back, then reached out with both hands and released his martial spirit. Shi Feng let the zombie spirit surge through him, and as it did, 2 violet soul rings suddenly materialized in his aura, each one shimmering with ancient power. He had only meant to display his prowess and astonish the old man. He wasn't afraid that Elder Qian would harm him. After all, Daolu's grudge was against Bibi Dong, not him, no matter how boldly Shi Feng boasted of being the future of the Wuhandian. How is this possible? Daolu leaped to his feet, his voice trembling with disbelief. His eyes were wide with horror. Only a true Great Soul Master could claim 2 millennium-old soul rings. How could this youth have achieved it? Master Qian, I earned these rings through my own efforts, Shi Feng replied coolly. His features, already pale from the zombie spirit's influence, grew even more unsettling, and a faintly malevolent aura radiated from him. But Daolu barely noticed his ghastly appearance. His mind was racing with one thought. What sort of monstrous talent was required to absorb 2 purple soul rings on pure merit? In the annals of the Angel clan, not even the primordial ancestor, who ascended to godhood at the dawn of time, had ever managed such a feat without inherited power. Yet here was Shi Feng, a mere novice with no special lineage, wielding 2 2,000-year-old rings as if they were nothing. Such prodigious aptitude bordered on inhuman. Shaking off his stunned amazement, Daolu drew a steadying breath. His years of mental cultivation quickly quelled his shock. With deliberate calm, he gestured to a nearby stone bench. Sit, he commanded. We will speak of this properly once your spirit has stabilized. Shi Feng dipped his head respectfully. Grandpa, you can just call me Xiaochen. I'm 9 years old now. When I awakened, I was born with full soul power. I'm currently a level 29 Great Soul Master, and I'll break through to Soul Master soon. Elder Daolu's eyes widened. Shi Feng's progress wasn't far behind Qian Renshui's, astonishing for someone his age. Excellent, excellent, he said with a hearty smile. Our entire Spirit Hall's future rests on you. Shi Feng brightened at the praise, then glanced up with a wistful smile. Grandpa, where's Sister Shuer? I miss her so much. Elder Daolu reached out to pat his shoulder gently. She's gone to a distant place to train. It may be quite some time before she returns. Shi Feng's face clouded. Sister Shuer is so beautiful. I really like her. It's too bad I won't see her for a while. As Shi Feng spoke, he carefully planted the notion of a childhood fondness in Elder Qian's mind. The old man, recalling Shi Feng's early bond with Qian Renshui, assumed the boy's sorrow was simply the innocent affection of youth, and felt a secret tug at his heart. With Shi Feng's staggering talent, Daolu couldn't help but think the boy might truly be worthy of his granddaughter. Shi Feng smiled brightly. Just planting that notion in the elder's mind was enough. As the boy's skills improved, the seed would surely take root and flourish. Never in his experience had a seasoned master been so completely outmaneuvered by a 9-year-old. Clearing his throat, Daolu finally spoke the question burning in his mind. Shi Feng, the boxing routine and footwork I just watched, are those your own creation? Shi Feng met his gaze without hesitation. Yes, Grandpa. Daluo's eyes shone with a mix of pride and shock. He'd half suspected the truth, but seeing it confirmed still left him breathless. With such natural talent and comprehension, the boy's future accomplishments would very likely eclipse his own. Barring misfortune, Shi Feng was destined to become the Spirit Hall's next cornerstone. A playful grin tugged at Daluo's lips. Well then, would you teach your old grandfather these moves? Shi Feng paused, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. Grandpa, I'm afraid I can't, Shi Feng said quietly, shaking his head. A flash of disappointment crossed Daluo's face, more intense than he had felt in years. Of course, such a precious, self-created soul skill wouldn't be handed out lightly. It had to be his teacher's strict order. But when Shi Feng added, "It's not that I don't want to teach you, Grandpa. It's just that I'm afraid you don't yet have the understanding required," Daluo's anger flared. How dare this 9-year-old imply he was too dull to learn? As a level 99 limit Douluo, he was among the most powerful in the world, and yet here he was, being talked down to by a child. Shi Feng, for his part, felt equally stunned. He had never expected Daluo to actually request Lightning Fist and the 3000 Thunder technique. These were not skills one could master by mere imitation. They demanded profound comprehension, a depth of insight few ever achieved. And right now, Daluo simply didn't have it. There was no way Shi Feng could, in good conscience, pass such a powerful self-created technique along, no matter who asked. Shi Feng couldn't help but notice the old master's face twist as if he just sniffed something foul. Realizing he'd hurt Daluo's pride, he hurried to add, "Grandpa, if you still have doubts, I can demonstrate it a few more times. Maybe seeing it again will help you grasp it." Daluo's sour expression melted into a broad grin. "Good boy. Go on, show me again. Grandpa's watching intently." Beneath that warm encouragement, the old master's confidence roared back to life. After all, he was the highest-ranking soul master on the Douluo continent. How could he possibly fail to comprehend a skill invented by a mere child? Yet each time he tried to mimic Shi Feng's movements, whether the swift strikes of the boxing technique or the fluid shifts of the body skill, he found himself utterly stumped. Determined, he sidled closer, matching Shi Feng's steps move for move, but the essence eluded him at every turn. Shi Feng lost count of how many times he demonstrated the techniques. By the time the sun hung high at noon, he finally set aside pride and blades, acknowledging that further practice would have to wait. The old master, cheeks flushed with frustration, remained on the mats, still puzzling over the very art he'd once assumed no one could teach him. Shi Feng tugged on his grandfather's sleeve. "Grandpa, I'm heading back for lunch." Old Master Daluo looked up as if he'd been startled from a trance. "No, stay here. I need to fully understand your boxing techniques first." Shi Feng buried his face in his hands, exasperated. If the old master really absorbed every principle of his style, he'd never leave. "Grandpa, senior sister wants me to go shopping this afternoon. You've already memorized every move. There's nothing more I can do right now. How about I come back first thing tomorrow morning and we pick up where we left off?" Daluo drifted into thought, then waved him off impatiently. All right. Go, don't worry me." Still unsure whether to laugh or cry, Shi Feng gave him a quick nod and bolted out the door, just in time to avoid having the old man change his mind. Chapter 85, Yan Who Almost Vomited Blood. Shi Feng had just met Daluo, the acknowledged strongest figure in Wu Hundian, for the very first time. To his delight, the two hit it off immediately. Shi Feng's ambitions went far beyond winning the heart of Xiaoxue. He also planned to claim the title of Holy Son for himself. With Bibi Dong's support already secured and now the possibility of Daluo's endorsement, who in the sect would dare oppose his formal appointment? Later that evening, Shi Feng returned to the dormitory to find Hu Liena waiting with dinner laid out on the table. Despite the mortifying incident from the day before, she greeted him as casually as if nothing had happened. Yet when their eyes met, he noticed a subtle change in her expression, something more measured, almost as if she now regarded him as a peer rather than a mere boy. Shi Feng's heart fluttered at the memory of how she had fled in panic after his intense reaction to her teasing. He couldn't help but wonder if Hu Liena dared to taunt him again, and he responded with that same fiery force, perhaps even more fiercely, would she retreat just as quickly in the future. After dinner last night, Bibi Dong decided that Shi Feng could use a few days off before classes began at Wuhundian Academy. She asked Huliana to take him out for some rest and relaxation. So after lunch, Huliana appeared at Shi Feng's side and briskly led him out of the dining hall. "Senior sister," Shi Feng began, hesitating as he walked, "you're not really taking me shopping, are you?" He forced a smile, though inwardly he thought it unnecessary. He'd returned from the death camp with his mind perfectly intact. Besides, the idea of spending hours in a mall with a girl made him more than a little uneasy. Huliana shot him a sidelong look and marched on. "What are you talking about? I'm here to help you unwind, not because I want to shop." Shi Feng exhaled in relief. Well, that made sense. He shrugged off his earlier worry and resigned himself to whatever plans Huliana had in store. But as they wove through busy streets, he realized something was off. She never glanced at the window displays, and her grip on his arm remained firm and purposeful, pulling him ever forward. He frowned. Whatever she had planned, it clearly wasn't a day at the mall. "Wait, Huliana, where are you taking me?" Shi Feng asked, his curiosity piqued. Huliana glanced back over her shoulder, a confident smile on her lips. "I'm bringing you to meet my 2 older brothers. With them watching your back at Wuhundian Academy, nobody will dare pick a fight with you again." Shi Feng's heart skipped. He'd been wondering who she meant. After a short stroll through a secluded residential enclave, they stopped in front of a modest villa. Huliana stepped forward and opened the door without a word, as if it were her own home. Puzzled, Shi Feng followed. Inside, the ground-floor foyer opened onto a spacious hall where 2 teenagers stood waiting. Both seemed to be around 15 or 16, yet each exuded an unmistakable aura of power. The first bore a striking resemblance to Huliana. He stood nearly 6 feet tall, his raven black hair cropped short and spiked like steel needles, and a subtle but potent energy pulsed around him. The second was just as tall, though his features were more unusual. Long, fiery red hair cascaded down his back, and his dark red eyes glowed with an intense, otherworldly light. He, too, radiated a quiet yet formidable presence. Shi Feng paused in the doorway, his eyes flicking between the 2 brothers and Huliana. Whatever lay ahead, he sensed that his life at Wuhundian Academy was about to change forever. As soon as Huliana burst through the door, she called out with delight, "Xiaoxue, Yan, I'm so glad you're both here." Her older brother, Xiaoxue, his dark hair framing an otherwise calm face, instantly brightened at her return. He rose and drew her into a gentle hug. Next to stand was Yan, the red-haired youth Huliana had mentioned. His amber eyes shone as he greeted his sister with eager enthusiasm. Huliana simply smiled back, nodding at him. Following close behind, Shi Feng stepped into the room. Both teenagers turned to look at him, curiosity and warmth in their expressions. "Who's this, Nana?" Xiaoxue asked, tilting his head. Huliana slipped her hand into Shi Feng's. "This is my junior brother, Shi Feng. When he was 6, he was sent away to that concentration camp. I never thought I'd see him again, or find him grown up like this." She introduced them properly. "Shi Feng, this is my brother Xiaoxue, and this is Yan." With a respectful bow, Shi Feng greeted them. "Hello, brother Xiaoxue. Hello, brother Yan." Xiaoxue studied him thoughtfully, then nodded in approval. "Sent away at 6 and survived. You've got remarkable strength, Shi Feng." Shi Feng gave a modest shrug. "Brother Xiaoxue really earned that top spot. I only managed to get this far because all the instructors looked out for me." Yan sneered from the sidelines. "Of course you did. As the Pope's disciple, you're bound to have special privileges." There was a sour edge to his voice, and Shi Feng saw Yan's eyes darken with suspicion. He knew Yan had a thing for Huliana, and that the girl always treated him, Shi Feng, as an older brother. It was obvious Yan resented the attention Shi Feng attracted. "Yan, stop it," Huliana snapped, stepping between them. Her brows were drawn in irritation. Xiao Feng, Shi Feng, did this on his own. He really is this year's #1. Shi Wei stared at Shi Feng in astonishment. Shi Feng had just turned 9, while most of the other students were 13 or 14. To outshine boys 4 or 5 years older than himself was almost unheard of. Yan rolled his eyes. "Sure, blah, but come on. Everyone knows the Pope wouldn't let his favorite disciple get a raw deal. I wouldn't be surprised if the instructors rigged the results." Huliena's cheeks flushed red. That's ridiculous. Shi Feng beat them fair and square. Shi Feng took a deep breath, forcing back the frustration rising in his chest. He knew Yan would never admit to losing honestly. Still, he refused to let the whisper of favoritism tarnish his hard-earned victory. Let's just leave it at that, he said quietly, determination sparking behind his calm gaze. The results speak for themselves. Sensing Huliena's slight displeasure, he quickly forced a smile and turned to Shi Feng. I'm sorry, little Feng. That was my fault. No problem, Shi Feng replied, offering her a reassuring grin. Before the moment could grow awkward, Xiaoxue stepped forward. Enough standing around, why don't we sit down and talk? Huliena tugged at Shi Feng's sleeve. Come on, Feng. We were supposed to go shopping today, and you two vanished. Let's go. I'm not going, Xiaoxue said with a wry grin, clearly dreading a day out with his sister. Go on, Xiaoxue, Yan interjected. It's rare for Nana to come out with guests. We can't just stay behind, can we? Xiaoxue hesitated, then finally shrugged. All right, I'll go. Shi Feng sighed as Huliena flitted from one boutique to the next. She'd initially claimed she was taking him along to help him relax, but now all three of them had become her personal shopping assistants, scrambling to satisfy her every whim. Yet Huliena hadn't forgotten about Shi Feng. She insisted he needed a complete makeover. Before he knew it, he'd tried on more than a dozen outfits and sat in a hairstylist's chair for an entirely new look. Your clothes are way too rustic, Huliena declared, beaming. Standing next to me like that would ruin my image. Shi Feng trudged along behind her, already feeling worn out by the endless racks and mirrors. Then, out of nowhere, Yan slowed his pace, dropped back a few steps, and slid in beside Shi Feng. Shi Feng, Yan said in a casual tone, though his eyes flicked sharply with curiosity. I heard from Nana that you're living with her now? There was an undercurrent of something in Yan's gaze. Was it suspicion? Or jealousy? Shi Feng knew Yan was a disciple of the Pope, and half wondered if this was a subtle way of marking his territory. Yeah, Shi Feng replied, keeping his voice even. When I first came to the Wuhun Temple, Nana and I shared a room, and, well, the same bed. He watched Yan's expression for any sign of outrage or relief, but the other teen merely raised an eyebrow. Palms pressed into his coat pockets, Yan gave a non-committal nod before falling back in line as Huliena motioned them onward. Together, the trio stepped out into the bustling shopping district, Huliena radiant with triumph, Shi Feng nursing a growing headache, and Yan quietly pondering the unexpected twist in their friendship. Chapter 86. A Comfortable Game with Senior Sister. When I arrived home yesterday, Senior Sister met me with unexpected enthusiasm. Before I knew it, we'd fallen asleep side by side, and she couldn't stop raving about how perfectly comfortable it was to share my bed. The moment those words left my mouth, Yan's polite smile dropped off his face like a broken mask. His expression twisted into one of pure disgust, as if he'd bitten into something rotten, and for a heartbeat, I thought he might actually vomit. Yan, are you all right? I asked, rushing to his side. You look awful. Do you feel sick? He forced in a few deep breaths, trying to calm himself, then plastered on a strained smile. I'm fine, he said, though his voice trembled. I just want to know, what exactly happened last night? My cheeks burned as I replayed the evening in my mind. Well, Senior Sister invited me to play a little game. She sat right on top of me. I braced myself for awkwardness, but instead it felt really comfortable. She wouldn't let me move until she'd had her fill of it, and then she promised to do it again, as often as I like. I watched in astonishment as Yan's face flushed darker than garnet. His forehead veins bulged, every muscle in his jaw clenched, and his long crimson hair seemed to stand on end. His eyes, already a deep, bloodshot red, flickered with a barely contained fury. The silence that followed was thick enough to taste. Neither of us spoke, but in that moment I understood. Whatever game Senior Sister meant by comfortable, Yan was far from amused. Yan's aura crackled with undisguised hostility, pressing down on Shi Feng like a physical weight. Startled, Shi Feng let out a strangled cry and leapt forward, clutching Huliena's arm. At the sudden commotion, Huliena and Xiaoxue both spun around, only to lock eyes on Yan, who stood perfectly still but for the murderous intent radiating from him. Yan, what's wrong? Huliena called, concern and surprise mingling in her voice. Xiaoxue echoed the question. Yan didn't answer. He simply stared at Shi Feng with an intensity that would have frozen anyone else in their tracks. In all the years he'd known Juliana, he'd never even dared brush her hand, and now, seeing Shi Feng cling to her, his rage was almost palpable. Shi Feng swallowed hard, meeting Yan's glare. "Senior sister, Brother Yan asked me just now what I usually do with you. I told him we play all sorts of games together," he said, frowning as he remembered. Juliana tilted her head. "Games? What kind of games?" Blushing, Shi Feng leaned in and whispered, "I told him you like to experiment on me and tease me mercilessly." The color in Juliana's cheeks deepened instantly. With a mock glare, she wrapped an arm around Shi Feng's waist and gave him a playful squeeze, twisting him side to side. "Shi Feng, how dare you embarrass me like that?" Shi Feng yelped as she wrung him back and forth, but couldn't hide the triumphant spark in his eyes. The moment was chaotic, but it was theirs, and neither Yan's scowl nor Xiaoxue's raised eyebrow could spoil it. Not far off, Yan stood frozen, watching the two of them. The flush on Juliana's cheeks and the shy smile playing on her lips confirmed it. What Shi Feng had told him was true. He had loved Juliana for years. She couldn't have been unaware of his feelings. Yet here she was, giving herself to a boy barely old enough to need a shave. Had she given any thought to what that would do to Yan? In his eyes, only he was worthy of her affection. Only he could ever deserve her. "Arr!" Yan howled, head thrown back as if he were challenging the sky itself. His chest heaved so violently that startled passers-by recoiled and hurried away. "Yan, calm down, talk to me," Xiaoxue pleaded, rushing to his side. He ignored her entirely. Instead, he shot Shi Feng a glare so bitter it made Shi Feng flinch, then spun on his heel and stormed off. "You two go on ahead," Xiaoxue called after them. "I'll find him and bring him back." Without waiting for a response, she gave chase. Left alone, Juliana turned to Shi Feng, concern in her eyes. "Do you think Yan misunderstood what he saw?" Shi Feng hesitated for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Did you know Yan has feelings for you?" Juliana's gaze dropped to the ground. After a long, breathless pause, she whispered, "Yes, I know." Juliana sighed, twisting the strap of her bag nervously. "He's liked me for years, but I've always treated him like an older brother. I haven't even held his hand. I want to reject him, but I don't know how to say it." Shi Feng leaned back against the railing, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "You don't have to say a word." She looked at him in surprise. "Why not?" "Because when he asked if you and I lived together, you told him yes," Shi Feng said casually. "And you added that we already share meals, cook and eat together every day." Juliana's jaw dropped. A moment later, her cheeks flamed red, but mischief sparkled in her eyes. She reached out and pinched Shi Feng's waist. His muscles tensed instantly, his skin firming as if she'd squeezed a metal rod. Her fingers slipped off, unable to make the impression she'd intended. "Shi Feng," she huffed, pulling back. "You've ruined my reputation." He chuckled softly. "Trust me, Lena, I'm doing you a favor. You're way too charming. If you turned him down gently, he might never give up." He winked. "This way, he'll think twice about messing with your roommate. If you're cooking rice with me, he'll give up for sure. Who'd spread a rumor like that otherwise, unless he doesn't care if people laugh at him?" Juliana froze. Shi Feng's logic was unassailable. Yet as she processed his words, a mischievous spark flickered in her eyes. "Come again? Who was it that cooked underdone rice with you?" "You were," Shi Feng shot back without hesitation, then pivoted and sprinted away. A curious flutter rose in Juliana's chest, only to be instantly replaced by anger. This insolent brat actually had the nerve to tease her? Since when did anyone besides her get to turn the tables on Shi Feng? She clenched her fists, determined not to let him off so easily. Juliana didn't hesitate for a moment. She vaulted to her feet and gave chase. But no matter how hard she pushed herself, she couldn't catch up to Shi Feng. When she finally stumbled back into the dormitory, gasping for air, he was already there, casually leaning against the doorframe with his arms folded. "You little scamp," she managed between panting breaths. "The teacher sent you off to that boot camp to hone your skills, and you come back showing off these ridiculous tricks?" Her cheeks were still flushed with anger. Shi Feng stepped forward with his hands raised in a calming gesture. "Senior sister, please don't be upset. It's done now. Let's look on the bright side and figure out what to do next." Shi Feng offered her a wry smile. Brother Yan is bound to give up on you sooner or later. Isn't that a blessing in disguise? Hulina's anxious frown softened. But if that happens, won't we lose our friendship altogether? Not a chance, Shi Feng replied, still smiling. He's not the petty type. Give him a sincere apology, and he'll forgive you without a second thought. Inwardly, though, Shi Feng thought, forgiving is easy. She's not facing someone like Su Yun Tao. Hulina looked downcast. She'd never liked Yan much, but she couldn't bear the thought of losing him as a friend. After all, they'd both been orphans taken in by Wuhun Palace, grown up side by side, and survived 3 brutal years in that concentration camp. A bond like theirs wasn't something you could just walk away from. Shi Feng laid a comforting hand on her shoulder. Come on, stop worrying, and let's eat. Hulina nodded and followed him, though her eyes still flickered with unease. Shi Feng didn't press the matter further. He trusted that, given time, she'd sort through her feelings. Before the sun had even risen the next morning, Shi Feng was already standing in the empty martial arena, ready to begin another day's training. Shi Feng was surprised to find Douluo waiting for him in the martial arena at dawn. The old man sat right in the center, his clothes and hair damp from the lingering morning mist. Shi Feng blinked at his disheveled appearance. Had he really been out here all night? Grandpa, Shi Feng ventured, how's your boxing practice going? Only then did Douluo register him. His weathered cheeks flushed a deep red. Shi Feng, show me again, he murmured. I still can't quite grasp it. Shi Feng stifled a sigh and moved to stand beside him, repeating the lightning fist demonstration step by step. In his heart, he already knew the truth. Douluo lacked the nimble speed and reflexes to ever master this technique. He silently hoped the old man would lose steam after a few days. Sure enough, over the next several mornings, Douluo's energy waned. His firm resolve at the outset gave way to listlessness, and each training session grew shorter than the last. Finally, under Shi Feng's gentle urging, the elder conceded defeat and announced he would abandon the lightning fist entirely. Before he left, Douluo pressed a small slip of paper into Shi Feng's hand. On it was his home address, with a note urging the young man to call on him whenever he encountered new challenges. With a grateful nod, he departed, leaving Shi Feng alone in the misty arena, already looking forward to what lay ahead. Chapter 87, Yan's Reckless Revenge. Time finally settled back into a quiet rhythm. 5 days had passed since that frantic shopping trip. During that time, Shi Feng devoted his days to boxing drills and body conditioning exercises, then retreated to his room to rest before rising again at night for another workout. Perhaps the constant urgency of life in the training camp had wired him too tightly. Lately, he found himself battling a persistent restlessness. Meanwhile, Hulina had all but forgotten the day Shi Feng insisted on handling matters his own way and used her as a shield. She still tossed out the occasional teasing remark, but she'd abandoned any further attempts to seduce him. Maybe she'd decided that he'd finally grown up and realized that it wasn't appropriate for an elder sister to pursue her junior so aggressively. Shi Feng didn't mind. Without her daily provocations, he no longer had to stay on high alert. Just before noon one day, Hulina burst in from outside, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Shi Feng looked up from polishing his gloves. "Senior sister," he greeted, "what's got you so happy?" Dropping onto a bench beside him, Hulina couldn't contain her grin. "Shi Feng, I went to see my brother again today. Yan's been ignoring me for the last few days. I finally worked up the nerve to tell him today," Hulina said, a bright smile lighting her face. "How did he react?" Shi Feng asked, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. "We grew up together," she replied, shrugging. "He didn't get angry at all. Once I cleared everything up, he just said I'll always be his little sister." Shi Feng's brow knit in confusion. In the original story, Yan had been furious, so jealous that he'd even ambushed Tang San in secret after learning of your kindness to him. There was no way he would so readily forgive Lena for spending the night with Tang San. Yet here he was, not only forgiving her, but apparently back on friendly terms. The whole thing struck Shi Feng as impossible. A niggling doubt twisted in his chest. He fixed Lena with a steady look. "Did you tell him I lied about that night?" Hulina shook her head, her expression gentle. No, I was afraid that if he knew the truth, he'd only miss me even more, so I let him keep the misunderstanding. Neither of them spoke for a moment. As Shi Feng stared at her, he found himself wondering just how far that misunderstanding would carry them, and what consequences it might bring. I finally relaxed. Now that he'd promised to treat me like a junior brother, the burden I'd carried in my heart for years felt like it had been lifted. Xiaoxue, I really can't thank you enough for all your help, he laughed. We're sworn brothers. If I didn't help you, who would? Oh, by the way, my own brother and Yan were officially accepted as Elder Hall disciples yesterday. They'll be moving into the hall soon, so we'll practically be neighbors. To celebrate, they're inviting me to dinner tonight. Want to come along? Definitely, I said without hesitation. Who could turn down a free meal? But honestly, I was thinking of Yan. Ever since I'd tricked him the other day, I didn't know whether he'd given up on Huliena or was silently building up resentment toward me. Either way, tonight's dinner would give me a chance to test his true feelings. If he meant to cross me, I'd be ready. Here's the revised sentence with Jiang Chen renamed Shi Feng and phrased naturally. In the evening, Shi Feng and Huliena arrived as planned and enjoyed a lavish dinner with Xiaoxue and Yan. Please provide the rest of the chapter, and I'll continue polishing it into fluent, idiomatic English. As Huliena pointed out, Yan spent the entire afternoon joking and laughing so naturally that anyone watching would never guess he'd once been seething with anger towards Shi Feng. It was as if he had truly let go of all resentment. When the time came to part ways, Yan bowed his head and offered a heartfelt apology. Shi Feng returned the gesture with a polite smile and accepted it. Xiaoxue and Huliena, witnessing the reconciliation, shared a look of relief and joy. But beneath Shi Feng's calm exterior, his mind had already grown chilly. He'd learned long ago to read the undercurrents of human emotion, and now he detected something troubling in Yan's apology, a powerful, covert resentment, fiercely suppressed. Only someone of exceptional self-control, and with a compelling reason not to act on their anger, could conceal such deep-seated hostility so convincingly. Shi Feng suspected that Yan's restraint had less to do with goodwill than with fear of the consequences. Given Shi Feng's reputation and standing, Yan dared not follow through on his darker impulses. And so, although outwardly all was forgiven, Shi Feng knew better than to trust the silence that lingered behind those polite words. Shi Feng knew that as soon as news got out that Yan had killed the Pope's disciple, there would be no mercy. Yan had become an elder's sworn disciple, but that honor wouldn't save him. His death was all but guaranteed. In Shi Feng's eyes, Yan was now a confirmed enemy, a living time bomb he could no longer afford to shelter. The question was how to deal with him without igniting a fresh disaster. Huliena had treated Yan like a brother for years. If she ever learned that Shi Feng was behind his demise, she'd never forgive him. A dozen different schemes flashed through his mind, but each one fell apart under scrutiny. He couldn't risk killing Yan inside Wuhan City. The Spirit Hall's security was too tight, and Shi Feng lacked any loyal agents in their ranks. If he went through official channels, Yan's supporters would swarm like vultures. If he acted alone, the mess could easily backfire. During this entire trip, you've hardly said a word, Huliena said, giving his shoulder a gentle shake. What's on your mind? Shi Feng looked up to find they'd already reached their dormitory. He forced a shake of his head, pushing aside his tangled thoughts. Nothing important, he answered, trying to sound casual. But he knew the truth. Finding a way to eliminate Yan without drawing the Spirit Hall's wrath, and without hurting Huliena, would take every ounce of patience and cunning he possessed. There are countless masters in Wuhan City. The moment any of them uncovered a clue, escape would be impossible. Shi Feng understood that as long as he stayed within the city's walls, Yan wouldn't dare make a move against him. Let this go for now, he thought. There would be plenty of time to deal with Yan later, when the opportunity was right. 5 days passed just like that. At midday, Shi Feng was deep in slumber when Huliena slipped out of the pontiff's chambers. She had business at the Elder's Hall. A short walk later, she arrived at a secluded courtyard and found Yan waiting for her. You're early, he greeted, offering a gentle smile. Huliena's eyes narrowed. Yange, why did you ask me to come? Let's go inside and talk, Yan said, pushing open the courtyard gate. This was his private residence within the Elders' Hall. Although disciples served different masters here, they all lived in adjoining courtyards. Juliana followed him into the main hall and sat down, still wary. After a moment's pause, she asked, "Where is my brother?" Chapter 88, Bibi Dong's Fury. "Your brother's away on business," Yan said with forced cheer as he poured steaming tea into a delicate porcelain cup. "He'll be back soon. Please, have a seat and enjoy a cup first." Juliana accepted the tea with a polite nod. She lifted the cup and inhaled the rich fragrance before taking a slow, appreciative sip. As she tipped her head back, her graceful movements and the subtle curve of her chest sent a thrill racing through Yan's veins. He watched her every gesture, his pulse pounding in his ears. He had already sent Shiyu away. She wouldn't return until evening, and once Juliana fell asleep, she wouldn't remember a thing. "Why can't you be mine?" he muttered to himself, heart hammering against his ribs. "I love you so much." A sudden tremor ran through his hands. The cup slipped, shattering against the floor with a sharp crack. Startled, Juliana barely had time to turn her head before darkness claimed her vision and she collapsed to the ground. Yan's face flushed crimson as adrenaline surged through him. He knelt, catching her in his arms, and gently but decisively lifted her to her feet. With his hands still trembling, he carried her toward the bedroom, his mind racing with anticipation. He felt no guilt. Only an intoxicating excitement washed over him, promising that soon Juliana would be his alone. Yan's obsession had been brewing for years. He'd loved Juliana in silence, always by her side, always watching over her, always caring. Yet every time he dared to hope she felt the same, she'd vanish into laughter and flirting with other men, never sparing him a single word of encouragement. She'd chosen that spoiled brat over him, over and over again. It was maddening. If it weren't for the single-minded thirst for revenge that drove him, Yan would have broken long ago. All his hatred coiled in his chest. Shi Feng must die, and after that, Juliana would be his alone. What happened tonight was only the beginning. There would be a second time, a third. And once Shi Feng was gone, Yan could court Juliana openly, without shame. He tightened his grip on her as she lay limp in his arms, the soft weight of her body sending a thrill through him. He buried his face against her neck, drinking in the sweet scent of her hair. This was what he dreamed of for so long. Juliana, the goddess of his heart, beautiful beyond compare, even if her most precious years had been offered to another. Tonight, at last, he would claim her. Shi Feng slipped silently into the bedroom and laid Juliana gently on the bed. He paused for a moment, drinking in the sight of her peaceful slumber, her soft breathing, the delicate curve of her lashes. A raw, possessive desire surged through him. Before he could think twice, he ripped off his clothes and leaned in to claim her. But the instant his hands moved, the air froze. It was as if the world held its breath, the candle flame at the bedside flickering wildly. Then a crushing weight descended from above, filling the room with darkness and dread. "You insolent dog, courting death!" A voice thundered, mad with rage. Outside the Pope's palace, the heavens themselves seemed to shudder. Storm clouds roiled overhead, and cultivators in distant meditation were jolted awake by that one furious cry. In every corner of the spirit hall, experts exchanged startled glances. What voice was that, such fury? In all my years, I've never heard the Pope so angry. Who could dare provoke her? She's the mightiest of us all, worse luck for whoever's on the receiving end. Douluo looked toward the palace gates, his heart pounding. Already, dozens of spirit hall masters were converging on Bibi Dong's pavilion. When the Pope's wrath was roused, one thing was certain: someone was about to pay dearly for their arrogance. More than a dozen elders happened to be in the Wuhun Hall when Pope Bibi Dong's wrath suddenly erupted. In the moments after she unleashed her oppressive aura and roared in fury, those titled Douluo raced toward the small courtyard. They burst through the gate to find Bibi Dong standing imperiously at the center, flanked by a strikingly handsome young man, Shi Feng. Her eyes, ice-cold and murderous, swept over the elders, and an unbearable chill gripped each of them. None could meet her gaze for long without shivering in dread. The sheer magnitude of her power felt bottomless. Exchanging anxious looks, the elders hastily fell into formation behind her. In all their years of service, they had never seen the Pope so enraged. Who was this outsider daring to appear in their domain? Two of them exchanged worried glances. All of their disciples lived on the same estate. Had one of them provoked her ire? With the elders in tow, Bibi Dong led Shi Feng up the courtyard's wooden stairs. At the top, she swung open the door. Inside lay a shocking tableau. Yan, completely naked, stood before Juliana, his hand outstretched in supplication. The sight halted everyone in their tracks. "Explain yourself," Bibi Dong demanded, her voice low and thunderous, while Shi Feng stepped forward, eyes fixed on the bewildered pair. Shi Feng burst into the chamber to find Juliana lying utterly still on the bed, her breathing slow and even, as if she'd been drugged into a death-like sleep. Yan stood off to the side, pale and trembling. Though he'd meant no real harm, the oppressive aura crushing down on him felt like a mountain pinning him to the floor. A group of elders streamed in behind Shi Feng, their faces registering sudden comprehension. They'd seen the Pope's disciple collapse like this before. No wonder the Pope himself had flown into a rage. "Senior sister, wake up!" Shi Feng dropped to his knees and shook Juliana's shoulders. When that failed, he pinched her arm hard, but still she didn't stir. Shi Feng's fists clenched. This sedative, it's astonishingly potent. Ever since he'd grown suspicious of Yan, Shi Feng had stationed his little black sparrow here as a guard. He'd expected mischief, but never dreamed Yan would go so far as to drug Juliana inside the Pope's palace itself. His eyes burned with urgency. Without another word, Shi Feng turned and raced from the room. He had to find Bibi Dong before it was too late. Bibi Dong's eyes blazed with fury as she looked at Yan. He had dared to lay a hand on Juliana, her favorite disciple, and worse yet, nearly repeated a betrayal that had once shattered her own heart. There was no mercy left for him. "Let me handle this," Bibi Dong said, striding across the chamber and gently resting a hand on Juliana's forehead. For a moment, the room was silent. Then, slowly, Juliana's eyes fluttered open. "Teacher, Shi Feng, why are you here?" Juliana murmured, her voice shaky. She tried to sit up, confusion mingling with the pain in her head as she recalled the last thing she'd been doing, talking to Yan. Shi Feng knelt beside her and spoke softly. "Senior sister, someone drugged you, and Yan tried to take advantage of you." At those words, Juliana's face went pale. She bolted upright, as if to search for proof, and then froze at the sight of Yan cowering by the bed, naked, ashamed, his fear written plain on his face. "How could you do such a thing?" Juliana whispered, horror overtaking her. Tears welled up and spilled down her cheeks as she clutched her knees to her chest, trembling. Yan had always been like an older brother to her, and now he had betrayed that trust in the vilest way. Shi Feng put an arm around her shoulders, drawing her close. "It's all right. I'm here now. You're safe." Juliana leaned into his warmth, her sobs gradually subsiding as Bibi Dong watched over them, determination in her eyes. Yan's punishment would be severe and well-deserved. Lena could hold back no longer. Tears streaming down her face, she collapsed against Shi Feng's shoulder and wept uncontrollably. Bibi Dong paid Lena no mind. Her attention was fixed instead on the young man standing before her eyes as frosty as a winter night. An unmistakable murderous aura radiated from her, so potent that the air itself seemed poisoned. Yan's heart seized. Beneath Bibi Dong's glare, he felt his will shatter, as though he'd been dragged into Shura's own inferno. His legs gave way, and he crumpled to his knees. "Your Holiness, have mercy!" he cried, slamming his forehead against the hard stone floor. Blood oozed from his brow, mingling with the dust at his feet. Bibi Dong's voice rang out, cold and unyielding. "Lena, kill him." Lena froze, her tear-streaked cheeks paling as she stared at the prostrate figure of Yan, who writhed and begged beneath her. Swallowing her horror, she took a tentative step forward. "Nana, you've always treated me like your own brother," Yan moaned, clutching at Lena's ankles. He lifted his blood-smeared face to hers. "Please, once more, forgive me. I swear I'll never betray you again." Lena's chest heaved with conflicting emotions. Shi Feng watched in silent alarm as she trembled under Bibi Dong's command, caught between loyalty and mercy. The chamber held its breath, waiting for her choice. Noticing Lena's hesitation, Shi Feng's expression grew urgent. He leaned in close and whispered, "Senior sister, he wronged you so gravely. How can you even consider forgiving him? If you don't finish the job, Teacher Will, this is her test of you. Do you really want to let her down? Chapter 89. The Reward from Senior Sister. After Shi Feng's warning snapped her back to reality, Juliana finally understood how far the man she once trusted had fallen. He was no longer the big brother she knew. If Xiaochen and their teacher hadn't arrived when they did, her innocence might already have been ruined. In a flash, a dagger materialized in her hand, and she lunged at the figure in front of her. Nana, don't! Bibi Dong's fierce aura crackled with deadly intent. Weak from shock, Yang could only stand trembling as Lena's blade drove straight through her heart. Lena staggered, almost collapsing, but Shi Feng caught her before she fell. Yan sank to her knees in a widening pool of blood. With her last precious breaths, she gazed up at Lena. I'm sorry, I truly loved you. I only ever wanted you to be happy. Tears streamed down Lena's face as she cradled Yan's lifeless form, her whole body shaking. Shi Feng's strong arms supported her, anchoring her in the storm of grief and rage. Whose disciple is she? Bibi Dong snapped, her eyes still blazing with murderous fury as she turned on the surrounding elders. An anxious senior stepped forward and bowed deeply. Senior Sister Bibi, this is my newest disciple, Yan. Silence fell over the assembly as all eyes shifted between the fallen girl, the distraught Lena, and the unforgiving gaze of their leader. Tension hung in the air, destined to shatter the fragile peace of the sect. I never imagined he'd be capable of something so vile. His true nature is far worse than anyone realized. Head Eldress Bibi Dong swept him a cold look and turned on her heel. A moment later, her voice rang back through the chamber. I hereby withhold 3 years' salary. Any objections? The elder's face went ashen. Before he could even open his mouth to plead, his fellow elders shoved him forward. One hurriedly stammered, No objections, Eldress Bibi. He wiped the sweat from his brow, utterly relieved. Who knew what fate befell those who dared defy her? Outside the hall, Shi Feng led Lena down the academy's grand staircase. Though they hurried, her tears continued to flow. The scandal had struck her to the core, threatening to shatter her composure. Once inside her dormitory's quiet sanctuary, Shi Feng seated himself beside her bed and gently patted her shoulder. It's all behind us now, he said softly. Don't worry, teacher and I will always protect you. Slowly, Lena's sobs subsided. After a moment's silence, she whispered, Shi Feng, thank you, and thank you, teacher. Shi Feng offered her a reassuring smile. Thanks for what? For bestowing on me the honor of being your junior brother? Juliana managed a small, grateful smile in return. Get some rest, Juliana. A nap will do you good. Juliana gave a small nod. Shi Feng, will you stay? He managed a reassuring smile. Of course. I won't leave your side. Drawing the quilt up to her chin, she closed her eyes. The day's events had utterly drained her, and before long she surrendered to sleep. Shi Feng settled into the chair by her bedside, watching over her in silence. He felt a pang of sympathy. No one deserved the humiliation she'd suffered, especially at the hands of someone she'd once called family. Though she slept, tears still clung to Juliana's long lashes. Tenderly, Shi Feng reached out and brushed them away. A soft smile flickered on her lips, as if she were dreaming of something pleasant. When Juliana finally awoke again, the sun was dipping low in the sky. She blinked against the warm light and saw Shi Feng curled up in the chair, fast asleep. A surge of gratitude warmed her chest. Carefully, she reached out and ran a gentle fingertip across his cheek, marveling at how peaceful he looked in slumber. You're so handsome, junior brother. Shi Feng felt a light tickle on his cheek and instinctively frowned, so abruptly that Juliana shrank back like a startled rabbit. His sudden movement sent a thrill through her chest, leaving her heart pounding and her thoughts in disarray. What was that feel? Ing? She had no idea, and it made her cheeks burn. Blinking blearily, Shi Feng rubbed his eyes and peered at her. Senior sister, did you touch me just now? Her blush deepened. She waved her hand dismissively. Touch you? No, you must have been dreaming of a beautiful woman brushing her hand against you. Really? Then why can't I remember? Shi Feng sounded even more puzzled. Juliana cleared her throat, forcing a bright laugh. Well, it's getting dark. Let's worry about that later and prepare for dinner. All right. Shi Feng let the matter drop. Seeing her back to her usual cheerful self, he felt a surge of relief. They left the cabin together, fetched their evening meal, and shared it in companionable silence, broken only by Hu Liena's light chatter. She laughed easily, as though the earlier incident had been nothing more than a trick of the imagination. Just as they finished eating, a maid in the livery of Madame Dong hurried over and bowed respectfully. "Miss Hu, Master Shi, Madame Dong requests your presence." At the maid's words, Hu Liena's smile faltered, and a flicker of anxiety passed across her face. Shi Feng gave Hu Liena a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, senior sister. Teacher was probably just angry with you. A proper scolding means she cares. Just keep nodding and admit your mistake." Hu Liena drew a deep breath and nodded. With Shi Feng by her side, her fear seemed to shrink. Together, they crossed the marble floor of the Academy's eastern wing and paused at the heavy bronze doors of Bibi Dong's study. Inside, Bibi Dong sat in silent contemplation, her usually warm expression replaced by a stern stillness. Shi Feng rapped on the doorframe. "Teacher, we've arrived." Bibi Dong looked up and fixed her gaze first on Shi Feng, then on Hu Liena. At last, her eyes settled on Hu Liena. Her voice rang out, imperious and unyielding. "Liena, do you understand what you did wrong today?" Hu Liena's heart pounded. She sank to her knees, head bowed low. "Teacher, I know I was at fault. I let my guard down because of old ties. I was blinded by sentiment and failed to see the truth." Bibi Dong's stern gaze softened just enough for Hu Liena to glimpse concern behind the reprimand. "Understand this," she said quietly. "In our world, personal attachments cannot cloud your judgment. Learn from this mistake, or you will bring ruin upon us all." Hu Liena swallowed hard and pressed her palms together. "I will remember, teacher. I swear I'll be more vigilant." Bibi Dong nodded once, then rose. "Very well. You may rise." She turned her attention to Shi Feng. "And you, thank you for supporting your senior sister. Your loyalty is commendable, but I expect you both to grow stronger, individually and together." Shi Feng inclined his head. "Yes, teacher, we won't let you down." As they left the study, Hu Liena exhaled a shaky laugh. "I thought I'd never get through that." Shi Feng slipped an arm around her shoulders. "You did, and next time, you'll be ready." Together, they strode down the corridor, resolved to turn today's lesson into tomorrow's strength. Bibi Dong nodded curtly. "Good. Remember this. If anything like today ever happens again, you'll no longer be my disciple." "Yes, master," Hu Liena replied, bowing her head. Bibi Dong gestured for her to rise, and Hu Liena stood up. Then Bibi Dong's eyes fixed on Shi Feng. Her voice dropped to a deadly calm. "Feng, you saw everything that happened today. Consider this your final warning. If you ever treat others like beasts again, I will kill you myself." "I promise, master, it won't ever happen again," Shi Feng said quickly, relief flooding his voice. At last, Bibi Dong's expression softened. "There's still over a month before Wuhundian Academy opens. I have a new task for both of you." She looked first at Hu Liena. "Liena, you've been stuck at level 39 for 2 months now. Feng, you've held at level 29 for the last month. I want you both to break through your current limits within 1 month. Once you've advanced, I will personally lead you on a soul beast hunt so you can claim your soul rings. Do you understand?" "Yes, master," they replied together, fully aware that, with their cultivation speeds so far, achieving that goal was well within reach. Shi Feng glanced over the 2 departing disciples and nodded. "All right, you two, go back and train hard." They saluted him and left. Once their footsteps faded, Hu Liena hesitated, then asked, "Shi Feng, how did you and Master know something was wrong with me at midday?" He gave her a reassuring smile. "I just had a hunch Elder Yan wouldn't let it go. When I saw you slip into the Hall of Elders, I followed. The moment I realized Yan was trying to poison you, I alerted Master immediately." Hu Liena's relief was plain on her face. "Thank you so much, Shi Feng." He waved away her gratitude. "Don't be so formal. You're my junior sister. If you really want to repay me, just treat me to a good meal sometime." Before he could say another word, Hu Liena darted forward, pressed a quick kiss to his cheek, and bolted away. "Consider this my thanks. Don't get the wrong idea." Her laughter echoed down the corridor. Left alone, Shi Feng rubbed his tingling cheek. He'd been looking forward to a feast, but all he'd received was a fleeting peck. Somehow, that felt like the bigger loss. Chapter 90. Departure from the Star Forest. Shi Feng sprinted to the door of the Pope's chamber and found Lena collapsed in Shi Yue's arms, her shoulders heaving with sobs. "Brother Shi Yue," he called urgently. Xiaoxue gently set Lena on her feet and turned to Shi Feng with a relieved smile. Shi Feng, thank you. If you hadn't arrived when you did, Lena might have. There's no need to thank me, Shi Feng interjected, offering a reassuring shake of his head. As her junior brother, I couldn't stand by and do nothing. Xiaoxue laughed softly. Well said. Lena, you really do have a devoted junior brother, and as for Yan, just erase him from your mind. Lena wiped her tears and nodded. You're right, Brother Xiaoxue, you should head back. If you're still upset, don't push yourself in practice today. Xiaoxue exhaled and gave a small bow. Understood. Shi Feng clasped his hands together in respect. Brother Xiaoxue, we'll take our leave now. Safe travels, Xiaoxue replied, watching as the two of them turned to go. As they walked away, he murmured to himself, that young man is impressive. I wonder what Lena will decide. Rather than return to his own quarters, Shi Feng fell into step beside Lena, following her back to her room. Shi Feng glanced back at senior sister Lena as he rose from the meditation mat. Senior sister, I think senior brother Xiaoxue is right. You shouldn't practice today. You might get unsettled. Meditation was delicate work. Any stray thought or emotion could send one's soul chi spiraling. Lena nodded. Don't worry, I'll rest today. All right, then I'll take my leave. Shi Feng bowed, slinging his satchel over his shoulder. As he turned, Lena's eyes flickered with sudden determination. Wait! She rose and blocked his path. Shi Feng, that song you saw, Nong, when you returned the other day, it was beautiful. Could you teach it to me? Shi Feng smiled. Of course. That melody was the Ballad of the White Fox, a tale of loyalty, heartache, and transformation. He motioned to the plush settee by the window. Let's sit. They settled side by side on the soft cushions, afternoon light filtering through papered panes. Lena leaned forward expectantly. Shi Feng cleared his throat. Before I teach you the notes, let me tell you the story behind the song. Her eyes brightened. Please. He began in a low, even tone. Long ago, in a mist-shrouded valley, there lived a white fox, a soul beast of rare purity. After 10 long years of cultivation, it finally took on human form. Drawn by the intellectual radiance of a passing scholar, the fox fell deeply in love. As Shi Feng wove the tale, the scholar's kindness, the fox's longing, the tragic sacrifice that bound their souls, Lena's composure shattered. Tears welled in her eyes, then spilled down her cheeks. Shi Feng paused, concerned. But in her tears, Lena only nodded, visibly moved by the depth of the story. Gently, he cupped her hand. Are you ready to learn the melody? He asked softly. She wiped her eyes and managed a trembling smile. Yes, teach me every note. Wah, Shi Feng, that white fox is so heartbreaking. He loves someone in silence, but in the end, they can never be together. Shi Feng offered a gentle smile and brushed a stray tear from the child's cheek. Hey, don't cry. How about I teach you to sing first, and then I'll head off to practice? The boy sniffled, blinked back his tears, and managed a soft, ah. Lena picked up the melody in an instant, and Shi Feng, no stranger to song himself, watched in awe as her voice surpassed his own. Whenever he sang, he could convey the song's melancholy, but it always felt a bit calculated. Lena's slightly husky timbre, on the other hand, carried every note with a natural, aching beauty. Before he could fully register her gift, she glided into a dance. Her martial spirit flared around her like moonlight on water, and for a moment she truly seemed a fox spirit, performing a final, mournful dance for a vanished lover. Shi Feng stood rooted to the spot, captivated by the effortless grace of her movements and the poignant atmosphere she conjured. When her dance ended, the training hall lay silent. Lena's fluffy tail swished before him as she asked, "What do you think, Feng?" He blinked, clearing his mind, then found his voice. It was incredible. A bright smile lit her features. Then I'll dance for you more often from now on, okay? He hesitated, glancing at the empty hall and the steady pulse of cultivation energy lingering in the air. Actually, it's better if you focus on your training, senior sister. Your cultivation is far too important to set aside. Shi Feng didn't say another word. He stepped onto the balcony ledge, then leapt effortlessly onto the roof below, where he began his daily cultivation exercises. An hour passed in silence. Bibi Dong still stared him down with that unshakable intensity. Her 1-month ultimatum to break through to the next realm weighed heavily on him. Normally, advancing a single realm took Shi Feng over 2 months. Now he had exactly 1 month left. Without the life-or-death pressure of a prison camp, his progress inevitably slowed, but he had no choice but to push himself past every limit. Inside the hall, Juliana sat rigidly upright. Her knuckles whitened around the armrests as she watched Shi Feng, her dark eyes glinting with some private calculation. At first light the next morning, Shi Feng opened his door to find Old Ji waiting on the steps below, arms folded and expression stern. "Old Ji?" Shi Feng hurried downstairs. "You're up early. Come on in. Breakfast's almost ready." Old Ji waved him off. "No time for that. Eat at your desk. This month, I'm your sparring partner. Once you've eaten, come find me. We start training immediately. I'm going to squeeze every drop of potential out of you." And so began another harrowing month in Shi Feng's life. Each dawn brought grueling sparring sessions with Old Ji. Each dusk, an hour of solitary cultivation on the roof. Bibi Dong's watchful gaze and Hu Lina's silent calculations only fueled his determination. Failure was not an option. Shi Feng's days followed an absurd, torturous routine. Each morning, Madame Ji, an elderly matriarch with perversely strict tastes, subjected him to a merciless beating. His signature corpse poison array, potent against almost any foe, bounced harmlessly off her reinforced body. His razor-sharp nails couldn't even scratch her. And yet, once she'd had her fill of punishment, she'd insist that Shi Feng draw every lingering toxin from her veins. Though those poisons posed little real threat to her, they were a nightmare to expel, and only Shi Feng's unique abilities could cleanse her. By afternoon, his next ordeal began. Juliana, recently freed from a cursed guise, would revert to her true, breathtaking form and shower him with relentless flirtations. Mortified by her bold advances, Shi Feng found himself too embarrassed to refuse, so he grit his teeth and endured her affections just as stolidly as he'd borne Madame Ji's blows. A month later, a small caravan of gilded carriages rolled out of Wuhun City, bound for the legendary Stardew Forest. Nestled between the two great empires, the forest lay only a day's journey from the city. Wuhun's temple boasted a handful of captive soul beasts, but they were minor specimens, limited in both variety and number. By contrast, Stardew Forest ranked among the 3 most renowned soul beast sanctuaries on the Douluo continent, a destination worthy of every ounce of trouble Shi Feng had endured. Countless soul beasts roam the Stardew Forest, each one carrying soul rings that a soul master can absorb if fortune smiles upon them. Today, Bibi Dong has brought her 2 disciples, Shi Feng and Hu Lina, into the forest to hunt these beasts and claim their rings. In one of the most luxurious carriages, furnished with a large bed and 2 smaller ones to accommodate master and apprentices, Bibi Dong finally breaks the comfortable silence. "Feng, what age soul ring are you planning to absorb this time?" Shi Feng meets her gaze steadily. "Master, I want to go for a 10,000-year soul ring." He's thought it through carefully. 2 years ago, he ascended to the realm of Great Soul Master, and since then, his body has grown far more resilient thanks to relentless training. He knows that a 10,000-year ring carries serious risks, but his confidence is unwavering. The instant he speaks, Juliana's eyes fly open. "Feng, are you crazy? A soul beast at 10,000 years old makes a massive leap in power. You could be seriously injured, or worse. Even a 9,000-year-old soul beast is leagues ahead of one that's only just reached its first year, and once you absorb a soul ring, you can't undo it. Far too dangerous." Madame Dong raised a hand to stop Juliana before she could speak again. "How certain are you, Shi Feng?" Shi Feng thought for a moment, then answered, "I'd say I'm about 60 to 70% sure." Madame Dong let out a soft chuckle. "All right, I'll arrange for you to face a 10,000-year-old soul beast. Don't let me down." "Thank you, teacher. I won't disappoint you," Juliana replied, determination shining in her eyes. Madame Dong studied Juliana's worried expression, then glanced at Shi Feng with a knowing smile. "Relax, Grandma. Commander Ji has been training Shi Feng for a month now and has complete confidence in him. You needn't worry." She clapped her hands lightly. "Now, you 2 should move to the other carriage and get some rest. Tomorrow, we enter the Stardew Forest." Chapter 91. Arriving at the destination. Shi Feng and Juliana climbed into the next carriage. It was considerably smaller, just a narrow cot with no room for any other seating. They exchanged a brief glance, both knowing that true trials awaited them at dawn. Shi Feng felt his cheeks flush. Senior sister, maybe I should move to another carriage. Hulina shot him a withering look. Where do you think you'd find an empty carriage at this hour? And the other two, Ju Douluo and Ghost Douluo, are already in the next one. Do you really want to risk disturbing them? The memory of those two title Douluo's unpredictable tempers made Shi Feng shake his head. All right, then I'll go ask old Ji for a horse. I've never ridden one before. With that, he stepped toward the door, determined to see if he could borrow a mount for the journey ahead. Shi Feng barely had time to register what was happening before Hulina's hands swept around him, guiding him back onto the makeshift bed. In one fluid motion, she straddled him, her warm breath brushing his face as she teased. Why are you avoiding me all of a sudden? Have I done something to spook you? Or are you worried I'll... She giggled, the soft curve of her lips so close he could feel her warmth. Shi Feng felt the gentle weight of her body against his chest, and his heart hammered in his ribs. He slid away, pressing himself against the far edge of the bed, turning onto his side. Hulina's laughter softened into a playful pout. You look exhausted. It's not worth pushing ourselves too hard tonight. She reached out as if to tickle him, then sighed and lay down beside him. Her cheeks flushed a delicate rose, and her pulse fluttered at her throat. This was the first time they'd shared her bed. 3 years ago, she would have been as cool as ice. But now, her nerves betrayed her. Pulling the blanket up, she brushed a stray lock of hair from her face and gave Shi Feng a shy smile. Get some rest. Tomorrow night, we'll slip out beyond the Star Forest and meet the others. Shi Feng kept his gaze fixed on the wall for a long moment before slowly exhaling and wrapping himself in the blankets. In the quiet that followed, two unlikely allies drifted toward sleep, each too aware of the other's presence to close their eyes easily. Shi Feng's heart raced as he lay alone in the dimly lit room. Lately, Hulina's behavior toward him had grown increasingly bold, so bold, in fact, that he half expected her to pounce out of the shadows at any moment. He couldn't tell whether it was just his imagination or if she really did have feelings for him. Aside from her brash advances, there was no clear sign. If she did like him, what would he do? Shi Feng closed his eyes and pressed his palms into his temples. His mind immediately drifted back to Xiaoxue. He cared for her deeply, and he could hardly entertain any other romantic notions, not when his heart already belonged to Shuer. Sure, Hulina's unwelcome boldness made him flinch sometimes, but he'd convinced himself it was nothing more than instinct. He sighed and let go of the thought. There were more pressing matters with Xiaoxue that still needed his attention. Exhaustion finally claimed him. After a month of relentless training, days blurring into nights, Shi Feng succumbed to a sleep so deep he barely knew he'd drifted off. He didn't know how long he'd been asleep when a sensation of warmth and softness stirred him awake. It felt familiar, almost nostalgic. A gentle weight pressed against his side, something living and breathing. Without thinking, he wrapped his arms around it, drawing it closer. In a sleepy haze, he tugged at whatever he held, only to jerk awake with a start. His heart thundered in his chest as he realized this was no dream. A soft whimper roused him from sleep. Something furry wiggled in his arms, and a thick tail brushed across his face. Achoo! Shi Feng sneezed violently and bolted upright. Blinking against the morning light, he realized he was clutching a large, fat, bushy tail, one that kept swishing against his nose and tickling him mercilessly. Blushing, he caught sight of Hulina sitting nearby, her cheeks flaming crimson. She turned her back to him and was squeezing her eyes shut in mortified silence. Shi Feng frowned in confusion, then looked down at the tail tangled around his arms. Senior sister, he stammered, loosening his grip. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Hulina's tail twitched once more, as though shrugging free, then retracted with a faint rustle of silk as she zipped it back inside her robes. She pressed a hand to her chest and forced herself to calm her racing heart. Shi Feng finally understood what had happened. During the night, exhausted from his constant chores, he'd unthinkingly curled up and fallen asleep hugging Hulina's tail like a blanket. Quietly mortified, he dropped his gaze to the floor, his cheeks burning hotter than ever. Hulina turned slightly, her cheeks still scarlet. Seeing how embarrassed he was, her own tension eased. She offered him a small, forgiving smile. Shi Feng cleared his throat. I promise it won't happen again. Understood, she replied softly, then let that be the end of it. The awkwardness lingered for a heartbeat, then both of them simply got to their feet and continued on with their day, the incident already fading into the realm of embarrassing memories. Shi Feng's eyes followed Hulina as she stepped out of the carriage. Even at her quick pace, he couldn't help stealing a glance at her flushed profile. Suddenly, she whirled around, saw him staring, and her cheeks burned scarlet. She opened her mouth to scold him, but the carriage jolted to a stop. Everyone, disembark. We've reached the small town on the edge of Stardew Forest, Commander G ordered. Seizing the opportunity, Shi Feng jumped down first. Hulina ground her teeth, clenched her fists, and followed. No sooner had they set foot on the dusty ground than the pair of bright red faces caught every guard's eye. Whispers rippled through the ranks. Even stoic Commander G, whose expression rarely betrayed him, let out a barely contained chuckle. Nearby, Bibi Dong gazed at Shi Feng and Hulina with wide curiosity, but she remained silent. Hulina bristled at the lingering stares from these middle-aged soldiers. She shot Shi Feng another venomous glare, then reached over and pinched his arm hard. Shi Feng winced, then managed a sheepish grin, silently promising himself to keep his eyes and his face in check. Shi Feng yelped as Hulina caught him off guard with a sharp pinch. "Senior sister, cut it out!" he protested, shoving her hand away. "Humph," Hulina sniffed, clearly annoyed. She swept past him and followed Bibi Dong into the stately mansion ahead. Alone now, Shi Feng took in the town that sprawled before him. Lanterns were being lit as evening settled, illuminating a maze of bustling streets. Merchants hawked everything a soul master might need for the perilous Stardew Forest. This was the last settlement before the vast Stardew Great Forest, still 100 miles deeper into the wilderness. Small shops displayed reinforced armor, specialized spirit weapons, and endless rows of healing elixirs. Beyond the outfitting stalls, other vendors braced themselves for incoming soul masters. They'd soon return laden with soul beast carcasses, furs, and exotic trophies to sell. Here, the resident population was sparse. Most who passed through were adventuring parties stopping en route to or from the Great Forest. Migrants and travelers outnumbered anyone looking to put down roots, so much so that the Wuhun Temple hadn't seen fit to establish even a small branch in town. In every direction, Shi Feng felt the restless energy of people preparing for a journey from which few returned empty-handed. Shi Feng paused at the gate. Though the Wuhun Palace's influence here remained strong, he felt little awe. This estate belonged to the Wuhun Palace. Its entrance plaque proudly bore the words, Wuhun Hall, and soul masters kept watch around the clock. Maids and stewards roamed the courtyards, maintaining every path and chamber so that visiting dignitaries would want for nothing. Glancing about for a moment, Shi Feng found nothing to arrest his attention and stepped inside. The grounds were vast, the layout recalling the grandeur of a pontifical palace. Broad marble walkways led past ornamental pools and manicured gardens, all arranged with meticulous symmetry. Beyond, 3 principal buildings rose in ascending grandeur. The Papal Hall at the center, flanked by the Elders' Hall and the Deacons' Hall. Each wing was reserved for members of a specific rank, ensuring that every soul, no matter how exalted, had its proper place. Chapter 92, The Fox Soul Beast. Shi Feng and Hulina settled into their quarters within the Papal Palace. Not long after they arrived, a meal was laid out for them, and the 3 master-apprentice duos assembled in the great dining hall. Shi Feng sat beside Hulina, his heart pounding with embarrassment. He scarcely dared speak, acutely aware of how awkward things were after his inadvertent brush with her foxtail. For Hulina, proud fox soul beast that she was, having a man's hand graze so intimate a spot was mortifying beyond words. Bibi Dong, one of the masters presiding over the feast, polished off her food in swift, elegant bites. At last she set down her bowl and chopsticks, rose from the table, and paused in the doorway. "You two are still young," she chided, her voice soft but firm. "Don't let yourselves be distracted by trivial matters and stall your cultivation." As soon as Bibi Dong's footsteps died away, Hulina hissed, "This is all your fault. Can't you control yourself for one meal?" She stamped her foot in irritation. Shi Feng cleared his throat, pressing a hand to his stomach. I'm full. I'll go explain what really happened to the papal guards. Humph, worthless, Juliana muttered, folding her arms and turning away. A few minutes later, Shi Feng returned, shoulders slumped. He'd approached the Imperial Guards stationed just outside the dining chamber and told them about the misunderstanding, how he'd merely been startled and accidentally collided with her tail. But their faces held only amused indulgence. None of them believed his protest. They merely exchanged knowing smiles, as if fox soul beasts were always prone to exaggerated tales and human guests never did them justice. Shi Feng sighed and rejoined Hulina at their table. Despite the warm glow of the palace lanterns, a chill of awkwardness still lingered in the air between them. Shi Feng decided against returning to his quarters and slipped away to an unused training ground on the city's outskirts. He knew that if he went back now, Hulina would pester him endlessly about what had happened. Better to get in a few quiet hours of practice first. The next morning, after a quick breakfast, the Wuhan Hall escort set out for the Star Forest. The column was imposing, Imperial guards clad in the hall's signature combat armor, each exuding a palpable battle aura. Passers-by instinctively scattered or bowed deeply in respect, and a few wide-eyed citizens whispered that with such a show of force, the escorted party must include someone of tremendous importance. Seated on Bibi Dong's ornately carved carriage were master and apprentice. Bibi Dong leaned close to Juliana and said, "Nana, your soul ring preparations are complete. I've dispatched scouts to track a 500-year-old fox spirit. We'll follow its usual haunts, and by afternoon we should have our chance." "Thank you, teacher," Juliana replied, her voice trembling with gratitude. Bibi Dong had entrusted her with a rare soul bone, and now, on the brink of forging her spirit ring, she felt both humbled and determined. "I vow to repay your kindness in this life, no matter what it takes." Bibi Dong studied Shi Feng thoughtfully. "Your martial spirit is exceptionally well-rounded. Your strength, defense, and speed are all top-tier, and your toxic prowess is formidable. Which type of spirit ring do you want for your third ring?" Shi Feng weighed the options. Bibi Dong was right. His martial spirit truly was versatile. Offensively, with his current raw power and deadly poison, even soul masters a full realm above him would find it nearly impossible to slip through his grasp. Defensively, few soul masters could land a meaningful blow against him, much less inflict serious injury. His 3,000 Thunders technique granted him breathtaking speed and agility, likely unmatched among his peers. And when it came to toxicity, he already wielded an overpowering corpse poison. Few spirit beasts could rival its virulence. He met Bibi Dong's gaze and shook his head. "Teacher, I haven't decided yet. I'd like to wait and see before choosing." "I'll decide once I face the 10,000-year soul beast," Shi Feng said. Bibi Dong inclined his head. "Very well. The choice is yours alone, Shi Feng. No matter which spirit ring you claim, it will only make you stronger." Shi Feng bowed respectfully. "Thank you, teacher." The small town lay roughly kilometers from the Stardew Great Forest, deliberately distant so that the forest's roaming spirit beasts would not threaten the townspeople. By noon, the expedition had gathered at the forest's edge. Bibi Dong and his master, Douluo and Ghost Douluo, and some 100 Imperial guards under Commander Ji's command. Each of the Pope's guards was a seasoned soul master, hardened by countless battles. Their combined strength was a terrifying prospect to any adversary. After a short rest to refill waterskins and stretch stiff limbs, the group crossed the boundary between open plain and dense, shadowy woodland. Shafts of sunlight pierced the canopy overhead, illuminating drifting motes of spirit energy, silent reminders of the wild power dwelling within the Stardew Great Forest. With hearts steeled, they pressed inward, every step taking them closer to the legendary beast that would determine Shi Feng's fate. Instead of the Pope's customary white robe, Bibi Dong appeared in a black, gold-trimmed garment that only accentuated her peerless beauty and statuesque figure. Like a dark rose in full bloom, she drew every eye in the hall. Even Hulina's famed allure seemed to pale by comparison. Standing loyally at her sides were her two guardians. The first was the chrysanthemum Douluo, a striking man in his 40s, his skin as pale as porcelain and long hair cascading down his back. His handsome, almost hypnotic features bespoke the power of his martial spirit, the Qirong Tong Tianju. The second was the ghost Douluo, Wuhun Temple's ruthless arbiter of law and one of the Pope's two most formidable subordinates. Forever concealed beneath a vast, hooded black robe, he resembled a moving shadow, so effectively hidden that most people, including Shi Feng, had never seen his true face. Wherever Bibi Dong traveled, these two imposing figures marched at her left and right, ensuring that no one dared challenge her authority. When Douluo glanced at Hu Lina, his face remained impassive. The moment his eyes settled on Shi Feng, however, a faint smile curved his lips, and he gave a slight nod. Shi Feng returned the gesture with a confident smile of his own. Although he had never worked alongside these two titled Douluo before, he knew that if he ever hoped to claim the title of Holy Son, or, one day, ascend to the Pope's throne, both Douluo and Ghost Douluo would be indispensable allies. Titled Douluo were renowned for their pride, and veterans like Douluo and Ghost Douluo even more so. Shi Feng's current favor with the Pope had earned him only a hint of their goodwill. To win their true support, he would have to demonstrate his strength and promise in the trials to come. With Hu Lina's objective clear, the party pressed straight into the heart of the Star Dew Forest. Their quarry was a fox spirit beast, creatures famed not only for their intoxicating charm, but for their razor-sharp cunning. As they neared its lair, the investigators from the Wuhun Temple hung back, unwilling to venture close enough to trigger the beast's suspicions. Before long, Shi Feng and the two Douluo surrounded the creature, striking with deadly precision. In moments, it lay defeated, its 9 flowing tails stilled forever. Throughout their approach, even the mightiest soul masters and wild spirit beasts they passed had scattered in terror at the mere glimpse of Hu Lina's company. But for Shi Feng, this was only the beginning. Winning the day against a single fox spirit beast was one thing. Earning the loyalty of 2 proud Douluo would require far greater feats still. Shi Feng's Wuhundian team was undeniably formidable, but the moment they stepped into the 1,000-year-old soul beast's domain, a mystery, force began to dampen their auras. Each member felt their power ebbing, as though unseen shackles bound their energies. Before long, they came upon the investigators who had been sent ahead.